Fatty Luo spread his hands. If I were to rank the sword list, this 7-star sword wouldn't even make it into the top 10. Grenade-throwing senior immortal was stupefied when he heard this, because he remembered that this fatty hadn't said that a few days ago. Didn't you say before that this 7-star sword is simply a wonderful and impeccable sword? It's only been a few days. Grenade-throwing senior immortal was speechless. That was before, this is now. Fatty Luo pursed his lips. I've seen so many spirit swords. What haven't I seen before? It's just that when I saw that Jinka in Ling Junren's hand recently, I realized that I was just a frog at the bottom of a well. Grenade-throwing senior immortal. Is it that exaggerated? You don't understand. Fatty Luo sked. From tip to tail, Lord Jinka is impeccably handsome. The only regret is that it doesn't have a scabbard. Nowadays, there really aren't many spirit swords like Lord Jinka's, which are energy efficient, powerful, beautiful, and righteous. Grenade-throwing senior immortal saw that Fatty Luo's eyes were bursting with light when he said this. Grenade-throwing senior immortal. Fatty Luo looked at the mirror, which was still playing the old devil's interrogation. His gaze was a little deep. Look, no matter what kind of person they are, and how much of a false reputation they once carried on their shoulders. Just like this 7-star sword of yours, in the end, won't they all be past their prime? So a civilian spirit sword like Lord Jinka, who isn't on the sword list, is a peerless godly sword in the truest sense. Of course, I'm not targeting your 7-star sword. It wasn't until I met Lord Jinka that I realized. Fatty Luo narrowed his eyes and smiled. All the spirit swords here are trash. Grenade-throwing senior immortal could already tell that this Fatty Luo had completely turned into a fanboy. By the way, do you have any leads on the place I asked you to look for? As the two of them talked, Fatty Luo suddenly raised his head to look at Grenade-throwing senior immortal. He remembered that he had asked Grenade-throwing senior immortal to look for the coordinates of a secret land. That place was called Devil Valley and was rumored to be a secret land that opened once every 100 years. It had a longer history than the Gate Between Worlds. Devil Valley didn't sound like a good place, but according to historical records, the scenery inside was picturesque. It was the kind of place where you could casually take a picture and use it as a screensaver. And the most important thing was that it was rumored that Devil Valley contained rare materials that were already extinct in the annals of history. I asked Little Black to monitor some fluctuations that are very similar to Devil Valley. Based on the year, Devil Valley will indeed open again this year. Grenade-throwing senior immortal pursed his lips. But I still want to know why you're going to Devil Valley. I'm going to make something. If I succeed, it'll be the glory of my life, Fatty Luo said proudly with a wide smile on his face. You want to make a sword? That was my goal in the past. I want to make a spirit sword that could easily destroy all the defensive equipment in my room. But after meeting Lord Jinka, I think it's impossible to realize this wish in this lifetime. Fatty Luo sighed a little regretfully, then raised his head with a hopeful look in his eyes. So, I'm going to make a peerless scabbard for Lord Jinka. Is that your latest goal in Devil Valley? Grenade-throwing senior immortal raised his eyebrows. That's right. Fatty Luo smiled. According to my original plan, I want to find a special compatible material like the 1,000 dried bone in Devil Valley. 1,000 dry bone? Even if it's in Devil Valley, it should be very rare. Grenade-throwing senior immortal sighed. The 1,000 dry bone that Fatty Luo was talking about was a compatible material in ancient times that could be used as an ingredient in elixirs to restore chi and blood. Back then, however, it had mostly been used to increase the stability of holy weapons. Unfortunately, because it took too long to grow and because of excessive harvesting, it had gone extinct very early on. Even if it really existed in Devil Valley, it was actually quite limited. It was obvious that Fatty Luo was well aware of this. I know that even if there really is 1,000 dried bone in Devil Valley, it's extremely rare. If I use it to make a godly sword, this meager amount of 1,000 dried bone won't be enough at all. But if I use this material to make a peerless scabbard, it'll definitely be enough. Speaking up to this point, Fatty Luo smiled devilishly. Chapter 257. The legend of Devil Valley wasn't a secret in the cultivation circle at all, and a lot of people had been looking for its entrance all these years. Whether it was at home or abroad, even cultivators from the West had their eyes on this treasure trove. Devil Valley contained resources that were extinct in the modern world. If one could contract Devil Valley like the owner of a fish pond, reaching the pinnacle of one's life wouldn't be a pipe dream. Most people looked for Devil Valley for the sake of profit, but Fatty Luo had his own pursuits. His goal in entering Devil Valley was just to find a 1,000 dried bone. A 1,000 dried bone was an essential material to create a peerless scabbard. So when he saw the hope on Fatty Luo's face and the boundless hope in his eyes, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was instantly a little flustered. Little Black has only detected some fluctuations that seem to be from Devil Valley, but can't be completely sure yet. If you want to enter Devil Valley, you'll have to rely on some luck, said Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. What he said was actually already very clear. Devil Valley was like a land of peach blossoms, which most people could only come across but not search for. There were very few recorded cases of people successfully entering Devil Valley. Furthermore, after many people walked out of Devil Valley, although it was said that they brought out the so-called extinct resources in Devil Valley, they had completely forgotten about their training in Devil Valley. So there was another theory. Devil Valley actually didn't exist at all. The real Devil Valley was nothing more than an illusion set up by an ancient almighty. The reason why people said that they had brought out extinct resources from Devil Valley was actually because they had been hit by an illusion spell. This information wasn't a secret, whether it was Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal or Fatty Luo Chuang. They were as clear as a mirror. And it was very clear that Fatty Luo wasn't willing to give up. No matter what, I want to give it a try. Ever since I met Lord Jinka, I knew that my dream of creating a peerless godly sword had been shattered. No matter how I make a sword, it's impossible for me to surpass Lord Jinka. Speaking up to this point, Fatty Luo held up Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's hands with an excited expression on his face. So, whether or not I can create a peerless scabbard is all up to you, Brother Lei. The corners of Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's mouth twitched abruptly, and he pulled Fatty Luo's oily hands away in disdain as he tried to maintain a smile. I'll try. It was still June 22nd, the 9th Wednesday of the semester. A lot had happened that morning because of the Old Devil's live broadcast of the trial. Teacher Pan had no choice but to come to the class early to start suppressing the riot. This was because the noise in class that morning was no longer what she had heard when she had just stepped out of the office. According to Teacher Pan, she had already heard the clamor in class as soon as she came out of the subway next to the school. It could only be said that as a pioneer teacher at number 60 High, Teacher Pan was in the end Teacher Pan. It was said that the teacher in charge had a good ear, and Wang Ling felt that this wasn't false at all, but suppression aside, Teacher Pan seemed to be in a particularly good mood today. All the crows in the world were black. All the head teachers in the world liked to do one thing, and that was to compare the students in their own class with the students in other classes. Teacher Pan rolled up her sleeves and propped both hands on the lectern as she sighed in exasperation. I don't know what to say to all of you. The gap between our number 60 high school's elite classes is growing wider by the day. Can't you learn from Fang Xing in the next class? Wang Ling abruptly raised his head at this name, because he seemed to have heard it somewhere. But he had only heard this name recently, after the survival contest. It was only later that Wang Ling learned that Fang Xing was a new transfer student. Furthermore, he had transferred from a neighboring city and was directly placed in the elite class. Number 60 High School only had 2 elite classes in total. One was Grade 1, Class 3, which Wang Ling was in, and the other was Grade 1, Class 2. Fang Xing was a new transfer student in Grade 1, Class 2. Dopey Gua had wanted to talk about this in the morning, but the news of the live broadcast of the Old Devil's trial was too big, and everyone had chosen to ignore the new transfer student, just like Wang Feng, whose headlines had been stolen. In the morning class, Teacher Pan was already very generous in her praise of the new transfer student. But this still wasn't enough to satisfy the students' curiosity. Therefore, as soon as the class was over, Dopey Guo was surrounded. Lotus Sun and Feather Lin have been sent next door as representatives to sound out this classmate Fong Xing. Any news on the transfer student? Where did he transfer from? Super Chun asked curiously. Have you heard of Tianshi Imperial High School? Dopey Gwitsked. Everyone shook their heads. Rather than not knowing this high school, it would be better to say that they hadn't even heard of it. An uncle told me that it's Jinghua City's aristocratic high school, and it's built on a spirit mountain. Although it's an aristocratic high school, not everyone can attend it. Every year, the selection process is very strict, and the number of students admitted is limited. Dopey Gua cupped his chin, a thoughtful expression on his face. So, this Fong Xing's identity definitely isn't simple. Since his school is so good, why did he choose to come to our number 60 high school? Someone asked. I heard from my uncle that if you want to study at Tianshi Imperial High School, you have to buy a house in the school district next to the school. Classmate Fong's family has now moved to Songhai City, which is why he chose to transfer. As for why he chose number 60 high school, I don't know. Dopey Gwa spread his hands helplessly. But apart from that, I also heard that this classmate Fong Xing has already caused 3 major events in a short one day at number 60 high school. Which 3? The first is that as soon as classmate Fong Xing arrived at the school, he directly challenged Clan Leader Yu. And he exchanged blows with a wooden sword used in teaching. After the two of them exchanged blows, classmate Fong Xing's wooden sword was completely unscathed, while Clan Leader Yu's sword directly turned into sawdust. When the wind blew, it directly turned into sand. Classmate Fong Xing said that his sword technique was called, "You are the wind, I am the sand." Dopey was said. Everyone, the second event was at the reception for the new students. Old Antique went to explain our school culture to classmate Fong Xing, but in the end, classmate Fong Xing fell asleep. Thus, Old Antique threw a piece of chalk at classmate Fong Xing, and he caught it. Everyone, the last event was also the most frightening. In order to welcome classmate Fong Xing, Mother once specially made a dish for him to eat. Dopey was said. Just hearing the 2 words, Mother One, already made everyone tremble uncontrollably. They recalled that before the survival contest, Dopey Gua had once suffered from Mother Wan's Fan Bing Bing One. If we use that Fan Bing Bing as the basis for the evaluation, if the toxicity of the Fan Bing Bing is 3 stars, then the toxicity of the Fan Bing Bing is 3 stars. Then Mother Wan's Heavenly Steamed Divine Conch is 5 stars in toxicity. Dopey Gua said with a horrified expression, and that classmate Fong Xing, after eating Mother Wan's heavenly steamed godly snails, he's actually completely unscathed. Chapter 258. Suppressing Clan Leader Yu and catching the chalk tip that Old Antique had thrown with his bare hands weren't enough to cause a stir as a transfer student. But after eating Mother Wan's heavenly steamed divine snails, it could be said that Fong Xing had already established himself as the strongest transfer student in the history of number 60 high school. Heavenly steamed divine snails, with a new dish that Mother One had developed together with Fan Bing Bing One. As far as Dopey Gua knew, when the heavenly steamed divine snails came out of the pot, just the steam it gave off was enough to instantly char all the fresh ingredients in the canteen. According to Mother Wan, this was one of the special properties of heavenly steamed divine snails, just like the delicacy snail rice noodles. To put it bluntly, it smelled bad but tasted good. Although eating it would definitely cause diarrhea, it had the effect of detoxifying and beautifying the skin. It was said to be even more effective than drinking body-tempering liquid, as it could dissolve impurities in the body in an instant. Of course, this was all Mother Wan's one-sided statement. After Dopey Gua had eaten Fan Bing Bing One, no one in school dared to take the risk of trying Mother Wan's new dishes again. But to be honest, Dopey had been hospitalized after eating Mother Wan's Fan Bing One. After being discharged, however, he felt that his body was actually a lot more resilient than before, and even his meridians were clearly unobstructed. He didn't know if this was the legendary reconstruction after destruction. This was the only thing he silently kept to himself and didn't mention to anyone else. All in all, as a new transfer student, Fong Xing's one day of transfer wasn't any less impressive than Lotus Sun's when she had come in number 60 high school back then. Tianshi Imperial High School status in Zhenghua City for the elite was comparable to the Oscars of elite schools, and those who could enter it were either rich or respectable. However, very few people knew about Tianshi Imperial High School. If it wasn't for Dopigua's uncles all over the world, they might not even have heard of this school's name. In a short 10 minutes after class, Dopigua spread the gossip about the new transfer students. Before the second class started, Lotus Sun and Feather Lin, who had been sent out to scout out the transfer students, came back hand in hand. It was actually quite normal for girls to hold hands, just like how they like to go to the toilet after class while holding hands. However, the main problem was that Lotus Sun and Feather Lin had skipped back hand in hand. Everyone in grade 1, class 3 was stunned by the scene. Dopigua was dumbfounded. It was normal for Feather Lin, this lively and bouncing fujoshi, to jump up and down, but why was Lotus Sun jumping along with her? What has happened? Classmate Fang Xing is so handsome. Feather Lin cupped her face in her hands, a love-struck look on her face. As she spoke, she elbowed Lotus Sun, repeatedly muttering, Right, what do you mean? How strong is he? Super Chun was also a little curious. I think he's pretty awesome. Lotus Sun looked a little shy. Feather Lin thought for a moment and quickly gave out the 4 keywords of a fujoshi: white face, long legs, chopstick spirit, peerless submissive. Everyone, strength. What's the use of strength when you're so handsome? When Feather Lin finished speaking, she suddenly seemed to recall something important and suddenly exclaimed, Ah, what happened? Feather Lin felt that her face was a little hot. I forgot to take a selfie with him. Everyone, Feather Lin. Classmate Lotus Sun, come with me. Lotus Sun, after saying that, she grabbed Lotus Sun's hand and ran out. Dopigua couldn't help folding his arms and sighing at this scene. It's over. It's all over. It wasn't just Dopigua. No one could have imagined that even classmate Lotus Sun would fall for a transfer student. Although number 60 high school would recruit 1 or 2 nouveau riche transfer students at this time every year, Fang Xing was the first one to make such a big fuss. Fang Xing's appearance was a little sudden for everyone. He was like a dazzling jewel that had changed hands and shone brightly at number 60 high school. To a certain extent, he also helped Wang Ling attract a lot of attention. But Wang Ling had a hunch that this was a dangerous person. Wang Ling's gaze pierced through the heavy walls to see grade 1 and class 2 on the other side, and he found Fang Xing in the crowd. He looked like a very sunny person. Because his school uniform was still being customized, Fang Xing was wearing a white short-sleeved shirt and a pair of blue-striped sweatpants. He bared his white teeth and chatted with the people around him. Wang Ling didn't stare at him for long. He only glanced at him for a moment before immediately looking away. But he didn't know if it was an illusion, but when he looked away, Fang Xing seemed to tilt his head slightly and look behind him out of the corner of his eye. It was Wednesday, and Old Antique happened to have a class. Taking advantage of the live broadcast of the Old Devil's interrogation in the morning, Old Antique gave the class a general overview of modern history and directly announced that this would be an important test point for the midterm exam. I've just received a notification from the education department that the live broadcast of the interrogation in the morning will be included in the textbooks in the second half of this year, at the earliest before New Year's Day. It's possible that it will be a key test item for the next 2 years. Old Antique propped one elbow on the dais as he said unhurriedly, students who are taking history in grade 3 in the future should be particularly concerned about this. Starting from this incident, we need to know the specific time and events of the live broadcast of the interrogation of the number 1 criminal, as well as the possible impact on future generations. Starting from the history of the Old Devil and General Yi's famous skills, these are all test points, Old Antique said. Teacher, can we take the test on this? Someone asked. Why not? Old Antique smiled slightly. If it were me, I would test you on the history of the palm sword's creation, the specific research process, and the historical impact of this spell's development on swordsmanship. Everyone has their own famous skill, and there are countless of them in history. Immortal Jinyuan's great spell of Jinyuan, Killer Taoist's enemy blink, and so on. Everyone, of course, from the perspective of test points. I think it's very likely that Devil Emperor Gua Pai's disciple, Immortal Shi Pai, will appear on the test paper. The old devil looked around calmly. So, does anyone know the origin of Immortal Shi Pai's famous skill, the White Knight spell? What's that? Many of you may not have heard of it, but this White Knight spell is a spell that can transform the spirit energy of heaven and earth into armor. As long as the spirit energy isn't exhausted, the armor won't be destroyed. Furthermore, it will split into two forms according to day and night. One is called Minkai, and the other is Darkai, Old Antique said. Chapter 259. Old Antique's words sounded like a joke at first, but the look in his eyes was especially serious. In previous year's college entrance exams, Old Antique had always been right on the mark. Therefore, the scores of the class he brought out in the history class had always been first in the district in the past years. The White Knight spell was Immortal Shi Pai's famous unique skill, but most people probably hadn't heard of it. This was because most of the unique skills had been developed by the people involved. Starting from Immortal Shi Pai's famous unique skill, Old Antique remembered something interesting. About a month ago, I gave everyone a lesson on the Gua Pai War. Do you still remember? That lesson was still fresh in everyone's memory, because in that lesson, Old Antique had once revealed gossip about Immortal Shi Pai's final fate. Before he was executed, he had been found to be pregnant and had left behind a child. When that devil was interrogated this morning, he said that before Immortal Shi Pai was captured, he had already been sealed in the stone ghost mask, so he had no idea what had happened to his disciple. Old Antique scared and shook his head. In my opinion, if Immortal Shi Pai was still alive, I'm afraid he would be a lot trickier to deal with than this old devil. That batch of melon skins, which was said to have been developed by Devil Emperor Gua Pai back then, actually came from Immortal Shi Pai. This person's research on refining pills and making weapons was very advanced. In other words, in that era, Immortal Shi Pai had already mastered the core technology. Speaking up to this point, Old Antique sighed a little regretfully. Unfortunately, he didn't put his knowledge to good use. Everyone, it was teacher Yi Han's PE class that afternoon, and he was quite popular among the school teachers. There was a good saying, if you weren't good-looking enough, you could make up for it with your height. Because of his naturally curly blonde hair and his tall stature, Teacher Yi was very popular with girls. Every time before the start of PE class, there would always be girls around Teacher Yi asking him about slimming techniques. How should they lose weight where there was too much fat? Was there any specific training? In the face of these questions, Teacher Yi always answered patiently. But today, Teacher Yi looked a little lonely. The physical education class of the elite class was held together. This time, when the students of Class 1 and Class 2 were in class together, the girls' attention was all focused on the new transfer students. Surrounded by a group of girls, Fang Xing walked out of the teaching building. They were talking and laughing so much that they didn't even hear the bell for class. It wasn't until Teacher Yi held his breath and shouted at the top of his lungs that the girls scattered disinterestedly and obediently lined up. This was Fang Xing's first PE class after coming to know 60 High School, and it was also Teacher Ye's first time seeing him. After the girls clustered around Fang Xing dispersed, Teacher Yi began to carefully size up this new transfer student. This leg is really long. Teacher Yi felt that chopstick spirit wasn't enough to describe the length of Fang Xing's legs at all. Based on his judgment, this should be a stilt spirit. The rows were arranged according to height, and Fang Xing, who was 188 meters tall, was at the head of the last row. When he saw Teacher Yi staring at him, he hurriedly moved his head, smiled, and greeted. "Hello, Teacher Yi. I'm Fang Xing." This voice startled Teacher Yi, and he was a little caught off guard. After staring blankly for a long while, Teacher Yi finally reacted. "Oh, classmate Fang, hello." To be honest, Teacher Yi felt a little embarrassed. He had been working at number 60 High School for so many years, and he had seen all kinds of students. Just now, he had actually been dazed for 3 seconds by a transfer student. No wonder this classmate Fang Xing was so popular with the girls. Sighing slightly, Teacher Yi couldn't help lamenting in his heart. It was so good to be young. Thinking back, he had also been young back then. Composing his thoughts, Teacher Yi then stood at the front of the line and clapped his hands. Come, the old rules. Everyone follow me to warm up first. Run behind me at a speed and pace that requires you to keep up with me. When you run, make sure you don't fall into disarray, or you'll have to run again. Wang Ling lined up next to Dopey Gua, his heart as calm as an ancient well. It was time for the familiar jogging segment, except that it was as troublesome as ever. Jogging was a form of endurance training, but the rules for jogging in cultivation schools were different from those in ordinary high schools. Not only did it train endurance, it also trained concentration. During the jogging process, everyone had to control their swords to float above their heads as they jogged. This was a special exercise method that the sports department experts at the municipal police station had come up with. Jogging in itself didn't give cultivators a very good endurance training effect. A foundation establishment cultivator, even in the early stages, could easily jog for a day and a night without using up all their spirit energy. But given that they had to control their swords to move forward, it was a huge test of their spirit energy. Jogging while controlling the swords would also invisibly increase the consumption of spirit energy, which would build up their resilience. I was worried that it would be too much, so I've always had you use spirit swords specifically for teaching purposes, which will consume less spirit energy. But today, I want to raise the difficulty. Teacher Yi smiled. Everyone, please take out your personal spirit swords. Compared with teaching spirit swords, your personal spirit swords will consume more spirit energy. Furthermore, jogging while controlling the swords will deepen your affinity with the spirit swords, and you'll be able to activate the sword spirit sooner. Compared with when the semester had just started, Wang Ling didn't feel as awkward taking out Jinka in public anymore. Ever since he had come back from number 59 high school's spirit sword exchange meet, everyone at number 60 high school knew that he used a peachwood sword, and they were already used to it. So when he heard Teacher Ye's request, he very readily summoned Jinka and held it in his hand. Of course, at that moment, the focus of attention was still on Fang Xing. I wonder what sword classmate Fang Xing is using. At that moment, a lot of girls cast curious looks at Fang Xing. Fang Xing rubbed the back of his head a little embarrassedly and looked at Teacher Yi with an embarrassed expression. Teacher Yi, I use a knife. Oh, did you major in knife skills at your previous school? Teacher Yi nodded his head. That's fine. The theory behind knife skills and sword skills is actually pretty much the same. Generally speaking, when you learn to control a sword, you can also control a knife. Classmate Fang Xing is so outstanding, it definitely won't be a problem for you to control a knife. But everyone else is holding a sword. Isn't it strange for me to be the only one holding a knife? Fang Xing asked. Teacher Yi laughed heartily. Classmate Fang Xing, don't worry. Since you've come to number 60 high school, we're all family. No one will laugh at you. But teacher, my knife is a little big. Fang Xing still had his own concerns. It's fine, classmate Fang. Teacher Yi patted Fang Xing on the shoulder with a resolute look in his eyes. All right then. Under everyone's gazes, Fang Xing finally took out his big knife from his school uniform pocket. Then, under everyone's horrified gazes, a big green steel knife that was 40 meters long stretched across the center of the sports field. Teacher Yi. Chapter 260. 1. This 40-meter-long green steel broadsword lay directly in the middle of the sports field, and the light reflected off its greenish-gray surface. What kind of picture was this? This broadsword looked like a weapon that had been left behind by an ancient demon god in the human world. Just looking at it gave off a sense of heaviness. Everyone was silent. Teacher Yi also took a deep breath. Student Fang, doesn't your broadsword have a shrinkage function? A lot of large weapons would have a functional shrinkage talisman implanted in them during the manufacturing process to ensure that the weapon could be carried around. Logically speaking, this 40-meter-long broadsword should be able to shrink. But regrettably, Fang Xing shook his head. This is a relic my father left for me. It said that during the forging process, the weapon refiner had been traumatized by a breakup and suffered intermittent Alzheimer's disease. At the most critical step in creating this big saber, he wasn't able to put in the contraction talisman. Everyone, for some reason, Wang Ling felt that Fang Xing's experience was shockingly similar to his own. He remembered that it had taken him a lot of effort to cure the old man of intermittent dementia back then. Teacher Yi broke out in a sweat. Then, student Fang Xing should use the teaching spirit's sword this time. But for the sake of the school's PE class, I suggest that student Fang Xing equip yourself with a normal-sized spirit saber or spirit sword. Very well, Teacher Yi. Fang Xing nodded and gladly accepted. Teacher Yi, can you help me put this broadsword away? The corners of Teacher Ye's mouth twitched. Can't you put away yourself? Fang Xing sighed. It's very hard to put this 40-meter-long broadsword back once it's drawn, so I don't usually use it so easily. Teacher Yi wanted to cry, but had no tears. This broadsword weighed no less than 6,000 jin, and Teacher Yi couldn't even keep his balance when he lifted it on his own. The spirit light in the storage space had an automatic acceptance function. As long as a part of an item entered the storage space, it would automatically recognize it and accept it. But when this 40-meter-long broadsword was placed on the sports field, because it was so big, the hilt was more than 2 meters above the ground. In the end, Teacher Yi found another PE teacher in the office, and the two of them picked up the knife together and slowly placed the hilt in Fang Xing's school uniform pocket. This scene was a little bizarre, but Wang Ling somehow felt that this Fang Xing was hiding something. Because when he put the knife back into Fang Xing's pocket, Wang Ling clearly felt Jinka tremble slightly in his hand. Because of this knife, the physical education class was delayed for a full 15 minutes, and the warm-up exercises before the class officially started. Number 60 high sports field wasn't big. One lap was only 400 meters long. Usually, during the warm-up, Teacher Yi would ask the students to control their swords and jog at a constant speed for 4,000 meters in 4 minutes, which was 10 laps. However, this time, because they had wasted too much time, Teacher Yi also raised the requirements. She limited the boys' time to 2 minutes and the girls' time to 3 minutes. Jogging while controlling the sword was already quite difficult, and now that the time was shortened, the group of boys could only complain endlessly. Wang Ling jogged in the middle of the line. He didn't feel much for this kind of foundation establishment basic training, and just treated himself as a sparring partner. Furthermore, he didn't need to control Jinka at all, since Jinka was conscious. Super Chun led the boys in running at the front of the line. Although he looked very tired, Wang Ling felt that Super Chun could clearly continue. Before entering number 60 high, Super Chun had been a sports talent and was more outstanding than most of the people here in terms of endurance. In contrast, Dopey Guo was already drenched in sweat by the 4th lap and vaguely looked like he was going to fall behind. Master Dopey had a big heart and a fat body. As a foundation establishment cultivator, jogging naturally wasn't a problem, but controlling a sword while jogging was very demanding. It was already very difficult for Dopey Guo to run when he used the teaching spirit sword to warm up. This time, he had to control his personal spirit sword to run, which consumed a lot of spirit energy. Of course, Wang Ling was right behind Dopey Guo. With just a thought, he could make it easier for Dopey Guo to run, but doing so would only harm him. The foundation establishment basic training classes at this stage were still very important. The foundation now was directly linked to the upper limit of future realm growth. Thus, Wang Ling didn't make a move from beginning to end. On the 7th lap, Wang Ling noticed that all the students around him were already drenched in sweat. He immediately manipulated his spirit energy to condense the moisture in the air onto the surface of his skin to make it look like he was sweating. Otherwise, it would really look too strange if everyone around him was sweating while he himself wasn't sweating at all. After 2 minutes of jogging, Dopey Guo directly collapsed to the ground, gasping for breath. Super Chun propped himself up on his knees and kicked Dopey Guo's thigh to get him up and walk around. After that, the girls' jogging warm-up was also over. Apart from Lotus Sun, the rest of the girls weren't in much better shape. Bored to death, Wang Ling sat on the side to rest. Most of the people here looked like they were about to die from exhaustion. Apart from himself, there was also Fang Xing. After 10 laps, Fang Xing's face wasn't red, and he wasn't out of breath, which shocked Teacher Yi. He felt that this transfer student's physical strength was too good. Even if he was jogging with the teaching spirit sword, he shouldn't have been this relaxed. And most importantly, he had deliberately set a time limit for the boys. Student Fang's physical strength isn't bad. Teacher Yi couldn't help praising him. Fang Xing rubbed his head in embarrassment and appeared very modest. My original school was at the foot of a mountain, and I had to walk 20,000 steps to class every day. Maybe I learned it then. I see. Teacher Yi nodded. He had heard of Fang Xing School, Tianshi Imperial High School, the strictest private boarding school for aristocrats in Jinghua City. Your results are outstanding. Teacher Yi looked at the blue notebook and stopwatch in his hands. He had recorded the time just now. In the last 3 laps, Fang Xing had clearly sped up and directly overtook Super Chun, who was at the front of the pack, to finish his warm-up first. Overall, he had finished faster than Super Chun, in just a minute and a half. In 2 weeks, our district sports meet will begin. I want you and classmate Chen to represent the boys in our school in the sword control relay race. Teacher Yi stared at Fang Xing and made his request. Unexpectedly, Fang Xing immediately agreed. No problem, Teacher Yi. If you use a normal spirit sword to jog, do you think you'll consume enough spirit energy? How about you take a break and we'll test it out again? Teacher Yi said. All right, Teacher Yi. Fang Xing nodded lightly. I'll help you borrow a spirit sword first. Teacher Yi looked around. Is there anyone willing to lend their spirit sword to classmate Fang Xing? No need. Teacher Yi, I'll borrow it myself. Fang Xing smiled and waved his hand. Chapter 261. Wang Ling was blank at this scene. He was sitting in the shade of a tree, pretending to rest, which should have been a pretty inconspicuous position. But Wang Ling had overlooked one thing. This position happened to be facing Fang Xing, and was actually quite close to him. In the end, Teacher Yi had just finished speaking when Fang Xing directly walked over to him. Classmate, can I borrow your sword for a while? Fang Xing smiled with a very relaxed expression. Wang Ling actually didn't want to lend it to him. For Cultivator, any magic treasure that belonged solely to them was a very private thing. And the most important thing was that Jinka had a very special meaning to him. After Fang Xing asked the question, neither of them moved as they looked at each other more than a meter apart. This was also Wang Ling's first time looking at Fang Xing face to face. One sat in the shade of a tree, the other stood in the sunlight. The two of them formed a sharp contrast. In the sunlight, Fang Xing's hair was a little brown. He was still wearing the same white short-sleeved shirt and blue-striped sweatpants. His face was very fair, which made Wang Ling feel that if he wore women's clothes, he would definitely be an expert. After a full minute of silence, Wang Ling finally stretched out his hand and handed Jinko over, because he really couldn't stand the scorching gazes of the girls around him. Fang Xing was now like the sun. He had just arrived at number 60 high school, but he was already shining in all directions and was really too eye-catching. Wang Ling had actually expected that if he refused Fang Xing's request, he would probably be hated by others even more than if he hadn't lent it to him. Thus, although Wang Ling had lent Fang Xing his sword, he didn't really like this person. He hadn't read that Fang Xing was deliberately trying to borrow his spirit sword. Everything had seemed very natural. But Wang Ling had a feeling in his heart that Fang Xing was doing it on purpose. Of course, Wang Ling also had his own reasons for handing Jinka over. Jinka had its own consciousness. If Fang Xing really was up to no good, given Jinka's strength, it would definitely be able to detect it. Thus, the rest of the PE class became Fang Xing's one-man show. In previous years, number 60 high school had always done poorly in the district school sports meet, and as the head of the sports team's teaching and research team, Teacher Yi had always had a headache. This year, number 60 high school's elite class finally had a few sports talent students like Super Chun. Coupled with the sudden discovery of a good seedling like Fang Xing today, Teacher Yi felt that this was an opportunity that absolutely couldn't be missed. Holding Jinka, Fang Xing stood at the starting line and waited for Teacher Yi to start. Using the teaching spirit sword, Fang Xing had run 10 laps in a good time of 1.5 minutes. If he used a normal spirit sword, the final result wouldn't be more than 30 seconds, which was 2 minutes. Teacher Yi felt that number 60 High's running event in the sports meet this year was basically a done deal. As Teacher Yi waved his hand, Fong Xing started to run along the track. A cultivator's jogging speed was much faster than an ordinary person's sprint. As soon as Fong Xing took off, she left a trail of afterimages behind her, and the girls around her instantly turned into cheerleaders. The girls cheered while the boys gossiped on the side. As a transfer student, Fong Xing was a little jumpy, which made some of the boys unhappy. But he could only suppress this unhappiness in his heart. At this critical juncture, anyone who went against Fong Xing definitely wouldn't end up well. Not only would he have to suffer the disdainful looks from the girls, even if he were to look for trouble in private, it was very likely that he wouldn't be able to win. How did the saying go again? I like the look on your face when you can't stand me, but can't get rid of me. Wang Ling felt that this saying was very appropriate for Fong Xing right now. Fong Xing ran the first 6 laps with surprising ease, and Jinka hovered steadily above his head. When he had handed Jinka over to Fong Xing, Wang Ling had already told Jinka to be as relaxed as possible, and he had also thought of a way to increase Fong Xing's consumption of spirit energy. What Wang Ling hadn't expected was that Fong Xing would actually be able to endure it. On the 7th lap, sweat finally dripped down Fong Xing's cheeks, and he clearly slowed down a little. Of course, in the eyes of an ordinary person, this speed was actually still a series of afterimages. Thus, Teacher Ye's eyes followed Fong Xing closely, and he was highly focused. After teaching physical education for so many years, Teacher Yi was actually very sensitive to this kind of slight difference in speed. Sitting in the shade of a tree and watching the show, Wang Ling saw Super Chun on the side, hands on his waist, dumbstruck. Classmate Fong Xing is too abnormal. Wang Ling felt that this abnormal was probably a great compliment for Fong Xing. Super Chun was a first-class athlete at the foundation establishment stage in Huaxiao Nation, and most of the time he looked at Fong Xing, he was judging him. For Super Chun to say such a thing was already enough to prove that Fong Xing wasn't ordinary. But Wang Ling always felt that Fong Xing wasn't as simple as he looked. Wang Ling looked at the track. In the blink of an eye, Fong Xing had already run the 9th lap. Accompanied by the cheers of the girls around him, Fong Xing's slow pace abruptly changed to 1 minute and 31 seconds. On the 10th lap, he passed in front of Teacher Yi like a gust of wind, and the stopwatch finally stopped at 1 minute and 31 seconds. Too awesome. Teacher Yi looked at the stopwatch and was so excited that he almost jumped up. When Fong Xing had been using a spirit sword normally, there had only been a difference of 1 second. Furthermore, the most important thing was that the spirit sword Fong Xing was using was Wang Ling's, not his own, and they hadn't signed a contract. In a situation where their chemistry wasn't that high, Fong Xing had actually run even better than the sports students. Teacher Yi instantly felt that he had picked up a treasure. After the run, Fong Xing's face was a little red. Panting, he came up to Wang Ling to thank him and return Jinka. When he took Jinka back, Wang Ling already knew for sure that Fong Xing's realm was far from being as simple as the foundation establishment stage. What on earth was this person hiding? This feeling of not being able to figure out Fong Xing's background made Wang Ling a little uncomfortable. Fong Xing pulled up his white short-sleeve shirt to wipe his sweat and smiled brightly. Classmate, thank you. Oh, by the way, I haven't asked your name yet. Wang Ling hid the profoundness in his eyes under his bangs. This was the second time the two of them had looked at each other. Before Fong Xing could say anything, Super Chin on the side had already interjected. His name is Wang Ling, and he doesn't like to talk much. Super Chun had always been the type to get to know people easily, and he always had an inexplicable fondness for top athletes in sports. Thus, his impression of Fong Xing wasn't bad. Oh, so it's classmate Wang Ling. Fong Xing nodded. Suddenly, he turned to look at Teacher Yi on the side. Teacher Yi, have you found everyone for the sports meet? Teacher Yi rubbed his chin and said thoughtfully, we haven't decided on the specific lineup yet, but our school wants to be a key city high school this year, so we still have to pay attention to the district competition this time. Headmaster, Chen wants me to bring out the strongest lineup. As for our 2 elite classes, you and classmate Chen are already confirmed. I see. Fang Xing smiled and bared his teeth at Teacher Yi. Actually, I think classmate Wang Ling is also pretty strong. Why don't you let him come along? Wang Ling could see it now. He wanted to leave quickly and avoid Fang Xing. Ling Ling, what's going on? Why do you look so flustered? The old man was a little puzzled. Loopy Toad raised its eyes to look at Wang Ling and winked strangely. It also felt that its little master Ling wasn't himself today. But very quickly, it saw Fang Xing say goodbye to a group of girls on the other side of the road, and it instantly understood what had happened. This was probably Loopy Toad's first time seeing Fang Xing, but it felt very strange. It felt that Fang Xing's aura was indescribably familiar. It felt like it had smelled it somewhere before. Ling Ling, is this your classmate? The old man stared at Fang Xing for a while as he walked over. Then he gave his first impression of Fang Xing, your classmate, has such long legs. Wang Ling, although the old man was old and had once suffered from dementia, his sense of beauty hadn't waned at all. Ever since he had learned to watch videos on demand from Father Wang, he had studied a lot about modern young people's otaku culture and could be considered a rather fashionable old man. Hello, Grandpa. Are you here to pick up classmate Wang Ling? Fang Xing came closer and greeted him warmly. Then, Wang Ling saw the old man nod and raise his hand to say, "You're okay." Wang Ling. Fang Xing laughed heartily. Grandpa, you're so funny. You're not in the same class as our Ling Ling, right? Why don't I see you in the class photo at the start of the semester? The old man asked. My name is Fang Xing. I'm new here. I just registered here the day before yesterday. Fang Xing replied. So he was a transfer student. The old man was instantly enlightened. For a parent like this to suddenly transfer in the middle of a class, the connections and financial resources behind him probably weren't simple. Furthermore, the old man had already pictured Fang Xing's parents in his mind. He thought a line from a skit, big heads and thick necks, either rich or a cook. So, if this classmate Fang Xing's parents weren't rich, then they were probably chefs. The old man instantly felt that he had found a common language. Wang Ling already didn't know what to say to ridicule the old man's strange train of thought. Classmate Fang, although you're not in the same class as Ling Ling, you're still schoolmates. In the future, we'll be indebted to you for taking care of our Ling Ling. The old man smiled at Fang Xing. Don't worry, Grandpa. In 2 weeks, classmate Wang Ling and I will represent the school in the Mere School sports meet. I'll take good care of classmate Wang Ling. When Fang Xing said this, he still had a harmless smile on his face, and his eyes were narrowed into slits, which looked a little meaningful. But that was the strange part. When Wang Ling had read Fang Xing's mind, he hadn't detected even the slightest bit of evil. This was truly the strangest person he had ever seen. After chatting with the old man for a while, Fang Xing suddenly noticed the ingredients in the tricycle. When the old man had left the hotel, his former disciples had forcefully given him these fresh fruits and vegetables, and they filled up half the tricycle. There were all sorts of vegetables and fruits, as well as a huge cured ham. The ham was vacuum-packed and had the words "secret recipe of Kikaro restaurant" written on it. Grandpa, are you a chef? Fang Xing asked curiously. But I retired long ago. When I get old, I can barely lift a spoon. The old man smiled. What a coincidence. Fang Xing was pleasantly surprised when he received the old man's reply. To tell you the truth, my family actually runs a noodle shop. Oh, noodle shop? What kind of noodles do you sell? The old man's interest was suddenly piqued. Fang Xing, we sell all kinds of noodles, but our shop's most famous noodle is still the handmade beef tendon noodles made by a master in Lanzhou. We also weave the beef tendon noodles into the shape of instant noodles and fry them at high temperatures. Finally, we make crispy noodle snacks. The old man, Loopy Toe, in some sense, he was like the sixth man of illusion. Lai Ming Ming had deep dark circles under his eyes, his hair looked messy, and his bangs stood up like a hedgehog's. Because he had stayed up too late last night, he had directly fallen asleep on the sofa in the study. As soon as she woke up, she saw Wang Ling as soon as she opened the door. He had just woken up when he saw Wang Ling. Lai Mingming yawned. He was over 180 centimeters tall and had a skinny body. Wang Ling had once wondered if this person would pass out after several days in a row with Father Wang in the study. Xiaosong, you're awake? Hearing Lai Mingming's voice, Mother Wang hurriedly greeted him from downstairs. You work hard, come down and eat first. Are you hungry? Not at all, not at all. This is what I should do. Sister, I've really troubled you. Lai Mingming awkwardly greeted Mother Wang as he went downstairs. When he saw Mother Wang downstairs, he even bowed repeatedly, as shy as he had been when he first arrived. How's the situation? Mother Wang came out with a plate of dumplings and placed it in front of Lai Mingming. Speaking of novels, Lai Mingming, who had just woken up, was in high spirits again. This time, Brother Sidhu's novel is really great. If it was fired, it would definitely be able to catch fire. I think it won't be a problem for this book to surpass Let Go of That Wet Nurse. Before he could care about the dumplings in front of him, he hurriedly continued. Although the theme of live streaming is a cliché, it is still the main force of the current series of entertaining and relaxing novels. Previously, Brother Sidhu had accumulated a lot of experience with Let Go of That Wet Nurse, so he was able to handle the new book more easily than before. There were a lot of jokes and memes in the book. There were also live streaming elements and plagiarism elements. Furthermore, the plot was really great. It's about an invincible high school student's daily life. Wang Ling. In order to keep a low profile, the protagonist chose a relatively ordinary high school, and in the end, by a free combination of factors, he entered the elite class of an ordinary high school. In the Tao Talismans class on the first week of school, he accidentally summoned a demon king, who was then taken in as a pet by the protagonist. Now that I think about it, it's still very interesting. Lai Mingming smiled very happily. Also, after discussing it with Brother Sidhu, I feel that we can definitely make an invincible series based on this theme. In the future, when we write books, each one will have an invincible protagonist. We'll clearly write each person's story, and finally write an epilogue where all the protagonists will fight for the Holy Grail together. Wang Ling. Mother Wang couldn't help laughing dryly at this familiar plot. Ha ha, as long as you're happy. Wang Ling already didn't have the energy to ridicule her. This was the first time he had seen someone sell out their son so thoroughly. Mother Wang had put in 40 dumplings, but Lai Mingming's stomach was surprisingly small. He had only eaten 10 dumplings when he rubbed his stomach and found that he couldn't eat anymore. He looked at Mother Wang and said, Sister, should we call Brother Sidhu down for dinner? When we came down earlier, it seemed like he was still sleeping. Mother Wang sighed. Just let him sleep. He's been exhausted these past 2 days. I just made some chicken soup, and when he wakes up, it'll be almost done. Both of you should drink some. Oh, okay. Thank you, sister. Lai Mingming smiled, showing his big white teeth. You've been busy for a few nights. Do you want to go wash up first? Mother Wang asked as she looked at Lai Mingming's messy hair. Ah, that's so embarrassing. It's fine, it's fine. You've been here so many times already. Why are you still acting like a big girl? Hands on her hips. Mother Wang smiled a little helplessly. The new dental tools and cups are under the cupboard in the washroom on the second floor. Go look for them later. You and your brother should be about the same size. I'll find some clothes for you later. Lai Mingming blushed. Then, thank you so much, sister. Don't mention it. Mother Wang waved her hand. It's getting cold now. I'll give you a set of long johns. Remember to wear them. Lai Mingming. Chapter 264. It was only around 8 o'clock now, which was still quite early. Wang Ling ate some dumplings. While eating breakfast, he glanced at the chat group in passing and found that it was quite lively in the morning. Dharmaraja had started the conversation and was talking about Devil Valley. Wang Ling had heard before that this was a legendary secret land, but had only appeared pitifully few times in history. Furthermore, most of them originated from rumors in the cultivation circle. The most frequent place to appear was in one circle of friends. No one had ever seen the existence of Devil Valley with their own eyes. According to effective statistics, It had appeared less often than the gate between worlds. Thus, Wang Ling was still very interested in this secret land. On the other hand, he had to find grenade-throwing senior immortal for another matter. A few days ago, during the joint military training exercise for the 6 schools, the troll arm that had been cut off by the gate between worlds was still in his field of vision. This was a severed limb of a demon king, and wouldn't rot even if it was in his field of vision. But to be honest, it wasn't of much use to Wang Ling naturally. This demon king's arm was a great tonic for cultivators, but neither Father Wang nor Mother Wang had the fortune to enjoy it. Even if it was just a severed limb, the demon energy inside was too strong. If an ordinary person ate one bite, they definitely wouldn't be able to withstand the impact of the demon energy and would explode and die. Thus, Wang Ling felt that it was better to give it to grenade throwing as soon as possible for him to recycle it. The troll demon king's arm was a treasure from its tendons to its bones. The bones could be used as material for fatty luo to refine weapons, and the remaining tendons could be ground into powder for immortal Toya to use as medicine. While Lai Mingming went upstairs to take a shower, Mother Wang cleaned up the dining table. Just as Lai Mingming was about to go upstairs, he heard Mother Wang's voice from the kitchen. "Ling Ling, it seems there was a delivery at the door earlier. Take a look and see if it's yours." Someone had sent him something? Wang Ling hesitated for a moment. He hadn't expected anyone to send him a package. And now, even the delivery person was so elusive, leaving after dropping off the package without even confirming who had received it. Just thinking about it like a thief was exciting. Sure enough, when he reached the door, he found a parcel on the ground. It was wrapped tightly and could be described as airtight. A flat cardboard box was wrapped in a thick layer of elastic plastic paper, and a layer of black steel film was added at the center. In other words, if one wasn't a cultivator, an ordinary person wouldn't be able to open this package. Based on the quality and toughness of the black steel membrane, if one wanted to tear open the package without the help of any magic weapon, they would need to at least be at the gold core stage. But who on earth sent this to him? The sender on the package was a series of asterisks, obviously anonymous. Wang Ling felt that this was very strange and a little fishy. Because he did not sense anyone passing by the villa, it was obvious that the courier who delivered the package was an expert and had done a good job of concealment. That was why he neglected his observation and became a fish that slipped through the net. Wang Ling put the parcel away. First, he listened to the sound, then shook it violently. The inside of the package was also handled very tightly, without the slightest trace of movement. Then, Wang Ling opened his heavenly eye and directly penetrated it to confirm that this package didn't contain anything dangerous like a bomb. It was actually a very small USB flash drive. After thinking for a bit, Wang Ling used his fingernails to cut open the package as easily as if he were cutting tofu. "Sister, your water heater is so comfortable. It can actually sense the temperature. When I feel a little cold, it immediately warms up." At that moment, Lai Mingming came downstairs while praising the smart water heater which Wang Ming had researched and modified. He was wearing Father Wang's long-sleeve shirt and jeans, and Wang Ling could vaguely see the bright red long johns inside through the collar. "Don't stand on ceremony. Just treat it as your own home," Mother Wang replied. The water heater that Lai Mingming was talking about was probably one of the few things in the Wang family that Wang Ling hadn't enchanted. There were 3 bathrooms in the Wang family's small villa, and apart from the toilet in Wang Ling's room, he hadn't touched the others. The water heater was installed on top of the bath tyrant. If this guy had been enchanted, it would be a gremlin, and it would actually be weird to have a gremlin stare at you every day when you took a bath. After the bath, Lai Mingming was clearly a lot more energetic than before. His eyes were very sharp, and he saw the USB flash drive in Wang Ling's hand at first glance. Recognizing the logo on the USB flash drive, he had an excited expression on his face. "Isn't this the new game Outlast?" Wang Ling hadn't expected this USB flash drive to be just a game. He had thought that it would contain some kind of educational video on human reproduction. "I've seen the trailer for this game. After you enter the game world, you have to complete the missions assigned by the game's main god one by one, survive the checkpoints, and reach the final checkpoint, and you win. Lai Mingming stared enviously at the USB flash drive in Wang Ling's hand. But this game hasn't been officially released on the market yet, and the ones circulating now are all early versions. How on earth did you get your hands on it? Wang Ling looked at the USB flash drive with a stupefied expression. He seriously suspected that someone had mailed it to the wrong person. This game can be played by multiple people. Do you want to play it? Lai Mingming stared at the USB flash drive and swallowed. Wang Ling felt that if he didn't stop this geek, the USB flash drive would definitely be eaten up. Looking at Lai Mingming's expression, Wang Ling suddenly recalled what Father Wang had once said. Novelettes were in fact all damn fat geeks, but now Wang Ling could see the difference between Lai Mingming and other novelettes. It turned out that there weren't just damn fat geeks, there were also damn skinny geeks. Unable to resist Lai Mingming's burning gaze, Wang Ling could only take him back to the bedroom, turn on the computer, and plug in the USB flash drive. In less than a minute, this game called Outlast had already been automatically installed on the computer. As the progress bar filled up, the game window directly popped up. Wang Ling rarely played games, but he was still stunned by how exquisite this game was. This was because the USB flash drive used in this game had been independently designed. When the game was loaded, the entire game interface could be directly projected on the computer screen and then enveloped the whole room, creating a holographic effect. This game is amazing. Lai Mingming was very excited. The game's rendering is very good. This USB flash drive is black technology. Wang Ling didn't say anything as he watched the scenery around him change. Then, a line of bloody words suddenly appeared in the air in front of him. Do you want to understand the meaning of life? Do you want to truly live? Chapter 265. This line of bloody words was hidden in the air, and Wang Ling could even smell the real scent of blood from it. If this was just a line of special effects in a game, it was too realistic. Wang Ling frowned and had a vague feeling that something was wrong. On the contrary, Lai Mingming looked very excited. This was because the realism of the game had already far exceeded his expectations. It actually wasn't difficult nowadays to use high-tech holographic technology like a USB drive and a computer screen to directly project a scene. But for it to be this realistic, Lai Mingming guessed that a high-level illusion spell had to have been incorporated into it. Under normal circumstances, ordinary people wouldn't be able to play this kind of game that combined cultivation spells to enhance the realism of the game. But Escape was different. In the latest game trailer last month, this was currently the only unrestricted, massively multiplayer online survival game in the world. Below the bloody words, there were only two options, yes and no. Lai Mingming pointed in the direction of yes, and very quickly, the initial loading screen of the game began. A string of words appeared in the air one after another. Do you think studying is the only way to make you happy? Do you think studying every day is the only way to feel good all over? Do you think you'll feel uncomfortable if you don't study for a day? Wrong all over. Actually, playing games is fine too. Moderate gaming is good for the brain, but gaming addiction is bad for the body. Wang Ling stared at this slightly jumpy introduction to preventing addiction, and the corners of his mouth couldn't help twitching. Then he saw the final loading screen, which had a logo of two axes stacked on top of each other. Below the logo were the words, Xinfu Technology. It was only at this point that Lai Mingming found it a little strange. As far as he could remember, Outlast didn't seem to be the same company. But very quickly, Lai Mingming was so engrossed by the game that he actually completely forgot about this. According to the plot, Wang Ling and Lai Mingming appeared in an ambulance on the way to a mental hospital. You are the second batch of test takers to be sent into this world, and also the most outstanding batch. A voice rang out from beside him. Wang Ling turned his head and saw an old man in a white coat staring at him. He looked to be in his 50s or 60s and had a skinny body. He wore a pair of reading glasses, and his waist was full of syringes, which made him look very strange. Lai Ming didn't even need to think to know that this must be some kind of Frankenstein character setting. This was the first time he had come into contact with an NPC in a holographic environment, and he couldn't help but reach out to touch it. Everything was too real, too cool. Before I say mission, the corner of the old man's mouth twitched. He couldn't help but look at Lai Ming. Please be a little more serious. Can you first remove the hand that's pinching my face? Ah, sorry. Lai Ming quickly retracted his hand. The old man was silent for a moment and looked at the two of them. You two should have realized it by now. You two have fallen into an extremely powerful illusion. Next, I will send you all to the mental hospital. Before you complete the Lord God's mission, this illusion effect will continue. What you need to do is to cooperate with the other teams that come to the hospital according to the requirements of the mission and escape from the hospital. A continuous illusion spell? Lai Ming was a little surprised. Although Escape was indeed the only unrestricted survival game in the world that incorporated magic to make it more realistic, he hadn't expected the game to actually have a mechanism where you couldn't quit until you completed the mission. In other words, if we don't complete the mission, we can't quit the game, right? Lai Ming asked the old man. That's right. The old man smiled evilly. His eyes were very mysterious. Then, what if your mom calls you for dinner? Lai Ming couldn't help complaining. Wang Ling, the old man, what if someone hasn't finished their homework? The old man, if someone is stuck and can't get out, can you still force them to stay? This mechanism is too unscientific. The old man broke out in a sweat, and at the same time, his expression suddenly turned extremely ferocious. A game is a game. No one can leave before you finish the game. And let me tell you, in this illusion spell, you will feel pain, you will get hurt, you will even die. Die? Hearing this, Lai Ming was finally stunned. The old man chuckled. How is it scared? Lai Ming's next words almost made the old man spit blood. What the hell? Your game has a resurrection token mechanism? The old man felt like he was going crazy. Suddenly, he pulled out a syringe and stabbed it hard into the back of Lai Ming's hand. The cold tip of the needle pierced his body, and Lai Ming felt a real, piercing pain, and he couldn't help screaming, ow, 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 ow. He realized that his hand was actually bleeding. Seeing Lai Ming bleeding and clearly feeling the pain, Wang Ling finally realized that there was something fishy about this game. This illusion spell was very abnormal. Normal illusions would automatically be broken when the target felt pain, but this illusion was obviously more advanced. It was an illusion that could enter deep into one's consciousness. He was now 100% sure that this escape definitely wasn't the escape that Lai Ming had seen, but a death game in the guise of a game. Borrowing the USB flash drive from earlier, everyone who had accepted this game had entered the illusion world. Was this a prank? Wang Ling's gaze abruptly turned serious. In that brief moment, just now, he had already thought of a way to break this illusion spell and leave easily. But the other people trapped in the game couldn't intervene. He had to think of a way to help Lai Ming break the illusion. But unfortunately, Lai Ming was still completely unaware of the seriousness of the problem. This damn homebody touched the spot where the old man had just stabbed him and asked, "What did you inject me with?" "Heh, does it hurt?" The old man sneered. "I injected you with a neurovirus just now. It will flare up when you're 24. If you can survive to the last stage, you'll get a hint about the antidote." Wang Ling narrowed his eyes. Sure enough, everything was as he had thought. This poison was real. He could clearly see the traces of the neurotoxin entering Lai Ming's body through the blood vessels on the back of his hand. Now. The old man finally turned to Wang Ling, and at the same time fiercely stabbed the syringe into Wang Ling's hand. "It's your turn." But very quickly, the old man realized a very serious problem. He realized that his needle couldn't go in at all. Chapter 266. For a moment, the situation was awkward. When the old man took the syringe back, he saw that the needle had been stabbed crookedly, and his face instantly turned black, like pickled mustard and soy sauce. When all was said and done, he was just an NPC, and couldn't think about something that was beyond his understanding. Because according to the game's plot, he would inject neurotoxin into everyone who entered the game world in the car, and then place them in a mental hospital. Surrounded by zombies, they would find a way to escape from the mental hospital and finally find the antidote. Thus, the old man could only continue to stab Wang Ling's hand with the syringe like what Nurse Rong had done. In the end, the old man ran out of syringes. The old man looked at Wang Ling's slender and long fingers, then at the smooth and clean back of his hand, and finally chose to give up thinking. Wang Ling, Lai Mingming. About 5 minutes later, the ambulance slowly drove through the iron gates of the mental hospital. The hospital looked very shabby, and because the game was set at night, coupled with the shadows of the trees and the strange cries, the entire atmosphere of the game looked even more terrifying. After the ambulance drove through the large iron gates of the mental hospital, Wang Ling and Lai Mingming found old newspapers scattered by the fountain in the center of the hospital. According to the usual pattern in games, these old newspapers usually recorded some information about the plot. It turned out that the old man had probably explained this information after the injection. But because the needle hadn't gone in, the old man in the ambulance had crashed, just like that. Lai Mingming was utterly shocked. He had never thought that there would actually be such a strange bug. Picking up the newspaper, Lai Mingming analyzed some useful information. This plot should be the same as the main storyline in the trailer. This mental hospital has been infected by a biochemical virus, and all the patients have turned into monsters. What we need to do is to do our best to avoid the monsters in the mental hospital, search for clues about the antidote, and finally escape from the mental hospital. Lai Mingming pointed to the main entrance of the hospital. After we enter from here, we should be able to find a night vision camera and several batteries in one of the wards. According to God King's mission instructions, you'll get points for completing the mission, which you can use to recharge the batteries. Hearing this, Wang Ling nodded. The plot of the game was quite conventional, but the main point was that it wasn't a simple game. There were injuries and deaths in the game. Therefore, if they wanted to break the illusion of others, the key was to find the Lord God who ruled the game. Wang Ling quietly opened his heavenly eye and saw all kinds of laws interweaving in the game world. Clearly, this was a game set up by a powerful being. Above the deity transformation stage were the tribulation stage, the void refinement stage, and so on. However, there were 3 major stages which were collectively known as the enlightened being, the itinerant immortal, and the true immortal. And this world had been set up by itinerant immortals. Although they weren't on the same level as General E and the others, they still couldn't be underestimated. Wang Ling's understanding of the prime gods was a law of nothingness, and it was very difficult to capture the prime gods' true forms when they were in mimicry mode. Wang Ling sighed silently. The only thing he could do now was to wait for the Lord God to show himself, and then look for an opportunity. While he was thinking, another ambulance drove in from the Iron Gate. It was the other team that the strange old man in the ambulance had mentioned. "Oh yeah, what is this place?" Wang Ling saw a fat man clamoring as he got out of the first ambulance, and behind him was a young man in a white shirt. Wang Ling's eyebrows instantly twitched when he saw the two of them. He hadn't expected this team to actually be Fatty Luo and grenade-throwing senior immortal. Why are Brother Ling and Brother Song here too? The moment the young man in white saw Wang Ling and Lai Mingming, he was instantly pleasantly surprised. Because he had visited the Wang family many times before, grenade-throwing senior immortal was quite familiar with Lai Mingming. This was Great Senior Wang's, and his real name was Song Zikai. It was impossible for him to forget. It was clear that grenade-throwing senior immortal was already considered a semi-acquaintance of Lai Mingming. Although they didn't usually talk much, they often ran into each other at the Wang family small villa. "How did you get in?" Lai Mingming asked curiously. "I was in Fatty Luo's shop this morning, and he suddenly received this express delivery. We wanted to open it to take a look, but then somehow came in." Grenade-throwing senior immortal smiled and scratched his head. "In the ambulance just now, there was an old man who wanted to stab us with a needle. Then I acted in a little self-defense. Wang Ling glanced over. Then, he noticed Grenade throwing Senior Immortal's ambulance. He saw that the old man in the back of the ambulance had also crashed, and his body was full of syringes. Wang Ling, based on a normal development of the plot, it should have been as Lai Meng had said. After the NPC old man in the ambulance had injected the neurotoxin and taken the patient to the mental hospital, the subsequent developments would have unfolded. According to the game's plot, after the old man had been injected with the neurotoxin, the game would have directly manipulated the ambulance to directly smash open the main gate of the mental hospital. Unfortunately, before the plot could unfold normally, the two old NPC men had already died one after the other. In front of the hospital, Fatty Luo looked around, his expression a little gloomy. Whether it was Fatty Luo or Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, the moment they entered this game, they already knew that this wasn't a normal game. This game was based on the original Outlast, but had been remodeled, and even the developer was different. I'm very sorry to have dragged you into this. This was probably directed at me. Fatty Luo's expression was a little gloomy. Why are you so sure, Brother Luo? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal found it a little strange. 2 days ago, I received a threatening letter, but I didn't take it seriously at the time. Fatty Luo laughed. But I never thought that the other party would actually use this kind of method to force me to come here. I heard that my peers in the weaponsmithing circle also received the same letter. So I'm guessing that apart from the four of us, there should be other people. What's their purpose? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal asked. Their purpose is still unclear, but what's certain is that they're looking for a smith. Anyone who has anything to do with refining weapons has been dragged into this. You came to my shop before, so you must have been affected as well. Fatty Luo narrowed his eyes. This illusion spell is very powerful. We probably won't be able to get out with our strength alone. For now, we can only follow the plot of this game and see what happens. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal looked at Lai Meng with a serious expression. Brother Song, don't worry. We'll protect you. However, Lai Meng didn't seem to be aware of the danger. This damn homebody stood in front of the door, his eyes fixed on the tightly shut door of the mental hospital as he asked, Then how do we get in now? According to the plot, it should be that old man who drove the ambulance directly through the door. Is this the only way to trigger the plot? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal rubbed his chin. In theory, yes. Lai Meng nodded without hesitation. Hearing this, a relieved expression appeared on Wang Ling's face. Actually, this made things easier. After Lai Meng said this, he saw Wang Ling walk toward the ambulance behind him. He saw Wang Ling pick up one of the ambulances and throw it straight at the hospital's main entrance with one arm like a rubber ball. Boom. The main entrance of the hospital was smashed open. Chapter 267. This voice sounded extremely like an illusion. There was a faint sense of reality in the nothingness, as though someone was breathing right next to his ear. Lai Meng couldn't help but tremble. Why did he hear the words Mother **her? Who on earth was talking? But Lai Meng already had no way to investigate the truth of the matter, because the main gate of the mental hospital had already been smashed open by the ambulance. Although he knew that Wang Ling was studying at a Foundation Establishment high school, when he saw Wang Ling lift an ambulance with his own eyes, he still couldn't help feeling the impact of the image. Wow, are all Foundation Establishment high school students this strong? It was clear that Lai Meng knew nothing about Wang Ling. Only Fatty Luo and Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's lips twitched at the same time when they heard this, because not all Foundation Establishment cultivators were this strong, and Wang Ling was the only one who was this strong. Lai Meng wasn't an outsider and was very familiar with Father Wang, but it had already become an unspoken rule to not reveal Wang Ling's true realm to someone who didn't know the situation. Both Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal and Fatty Luo were well aware of this, so when they saw Wang Ling and Lai Meng, they addressed him as Brother Ling. The main gate of the hospital was successfully smashed open by the ambulance, and the game plot progressed smoothly. After Wang Ling and the others entered the main gate, they saw the back of a figure with disheveled hair. It looked like a girl who was still wearing the blue and white striped hospital gown, but it was obvious that she wasn't in a normal state of mind. She stood in a corner with her back to Wang Ling and the others as she muttered something to herself. This scene was quite horrifying. Not only was this a game of death, it was also one that combined horror elements. Even though Wang Ling had always felt that he wouldn't be scared, this feeling made him a little uncomfortable. In contrast, Lai Mingming was clearly a veteran of many battles. He looked very excited as he directly walked over to the girl. She should be able to lead us to the room where we found the night vision camera. Based on how the plot develops, after we find the camera, the hospital's last remaining power source will be cut off. We can only rely on the night vision camera to continue triggering the plot. This game is really troublesome. Grenade throwing senior immortal side. If the plot could only be triggered by the night vision camera, then the sky I would not be as useful in this environment. Next, we just need to touch this girl, and we should be able to trigger the plot. Lai Mingming reached out and pressed the girl's thin shoulder. The next moment, the girl turned to look at him as if she had been electrocuted. Her slightly loose hair parted slightly, and Lai Mingming could clearly see the madwoman's distorted face. Her face was festering as if it had been burned. She howled madly, and from this angle, the crazy woman's mutated shark teeth could be clearly seen. Lai Mingming had long since gotten used to these kinds of jump scares in games, but in this incomparably realistic environment, he was still so scared that he started panting heavily. He was so frightened that he retracted his hand, but this crazy woman grabbed his arm even faster. Lai Mingming had never imagined that this girl, with such a thin and weak body, would actually have such great strength. Not good. Grenade throwing senior immortal cried out in alarm, but it was already too late. The crazy woman had already firmly gripped Lai Mingming's arm, and then she opened her mouth and bit down viciously with her sharp, bloody teeth. There was a crack, and very quickly, the crazy woman's eyes widened in astonishment because she saw a golden light wrap around Lai Mingming's arm, and the moment she bit down, the golden light had shattered her teeth. In just a split second, her teeth had been lost. Lai Mingming, Grenade throwing senior immortal, Fatty Luo, even Wang Ling couldn't deny that there were times when karma really was a very magical thing. If Lai Mingming hadn't gone through the script with Father Wang, he wouldn't have forgotten to take a shower for a few days and been asked by Mother Wang to wash himself clean. If he hadn't washed himself clean, he wouldn't have changed into the long johns that Mother Wang had given him. If he hadn't changed into the long johns, the crazy woman's teeth wouldn't have fallen out. Fortunately, although the crazy woman's teeth had all fallen out, the plot still unfolded smoothly. What kind of scene was this? A toothless crazy woman leading the way with a lifeless expression on her face was a miracle to Wang Ling from the bottom of his heart. So far, the plot is exactly the same as when I played the game back then. As Lai Mingming had said, the crazy woman led them to the door of a small room, and then silently left on her own. We should be able to find a night vision camera that will trigger the plot from here. Grenade throwing senior immortal nodded. Worried that something unforeseen would happen again, he was the first to open the door this time. However, nothing happened in the room this time, and it was unexpectedly quiet. Fatty Luo found the night vision camera that Lai Mingming had mentioned on the floor, as well as a hospital report. Because he had played the trial version of the game, Lai Mingming was very familiar with the contents of the report. If I remember correctly, this report has something to do with that crazy woman from before. The plot in the trial version was a simplified version, but now we can finally take a good look at the main plot. What does it say? Asked Grenade throwing senior immortal. Chapter 268. Death Proclamation? What's that? Grenade throwing senior immortal thought the name was a little familiar. This can be considered a relatively famous modern magic treasure. It's shaped like a keyboard. Fatty Luo seemed to have heard of it before. It seems that you can raise your rage points by constantly smashing things. Wang Ling already didn't have the energy to ridicule this magic treasure and the plot between the female lunatic and her husband. But no matter how the game plot unfolded, before the game god revealed himself, Wang Ling wouldn't be able to directly track down the other party's true body after he turned into a pile of data. At that moment, Wang Ling suddenly thought of Little Black's benefits. It would be great if Little Black was here, then they could work together to catch the god. But now, the only way was to wait for the god of this game to lose his cool and reveal a flaw first. After Lai Mingming picked up the night vision camera, the entire mental hospital went completely dark. Whether it was the rooms or the corridors, everything became pitch black. Even as a veteran otaku player, Lai Mingming couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat. TSK, that's a little scary. Brother Luo, have you sensed anyone else's aura? Asked grenade-throwing senior immortal. Not yet. Fatty Luo frowned. I suspect that the other people entered a different game space than we did. We still don't know the goal of the mastermind behind the scenes, but for him to be able to set up such a big trap, he definitely isn't simple. What should we do next? That's the end of the trial. According to the plot, we should explore the place with this night vision camera. We'll find some clues and continue the plot. The female lunatic's husband and the ward number were specifically written in the appraisal report just now. I think we can go there and explore a little. Lai Mingming sorted out his thoughts and said, I saw the trailer before, and it seems that zombies will appear after we get the night vision camera. The game will design some iron cabinets and oil drums in the plot, so when we encounter zombies, it's best to hide in them. Grenade-throwing senior immortal. We still have a hide? Wouldn't it be better to just kill them? Lai Mingming, you can try. Just as Lai Mingming had said, Outlast would indeed arrange for some zombies to hinder the development of the plot. The weakest were the normal soldiers like the crazy woman from before. Above them were the zombies whose appearance had completely mutated. They were also known as fatties. The last level was the gecko people. These zombies could use the walls to crawl at high speeds on their four limbs. In the trial version, some players also called it Voldemort. Holding the night vision camera, Lai Mingming walked along the corridor. When he saw the metal cabinet in the corridor, he stopped. Be careful. There's something ahead. Although Lai Mingming was just an ordinary person, he was still quite observant. When he saw the metal cabinets set up in the game appear next to him, he immediately knew that the road ahead wasn't going to be peaceful. Actually, from a long distance away, Wang Ling had already sensed that there were more than 10 minions hiding in the rooms to the right of the iron cabinet. As soon as Wang Ling walked over, they would immediately rush out. Grenade-throwing senior immortal said softly, Brother Song, don't be afraid, I'll go take a look. Just as he walked past the iron cabinet on the side, a large group of figures immediately burst out of the rooms in front of them and staggered toward them. Holy shit, so many of them. Are they going to hide in the cabinet? They're definitely going to hide in the cabinet, right? Lai Mingming was startled by this scene. Sure enough, the shock of seeing a group of zombies charge toward him on the screen was completely different from when he was facing an army of zombies head-on. Brother Song, don't panic. I'll directly F***CK them up. Boom! Grenade-throwing senior immortal threw a skybomb grenade at the zombies in front of them. Instantly, golden light shone in all directions and lightning flashed. A large number of zombies in front of them were blown to bits, but not all of them were dead. Some whose heads hadn't been blown off were still using their arms to crawl in their direction. Even if they were just a bunch of random soldiers, their regenerative abilities were amazing. As long as their brains were still intact, their bodies could continuously regenerate. Those zombies that had their lower bodies destroyed could only crawl for less than half a meter, and their new bodies had already reformed in the process of moving forward. Grenade-throwing senior immortal didn't say much. He directly strode forward and chopped off the heads of these minions with one slash of his sword. Sure enough, you still have to chop off their heads to fight these things? Fatty Luo smiled slightly and also joined the fight. He was even more violent than grenade-throwing as he stretched out his hand and directly crushed the heads of these minions. The average realm of a smith actually wasn't high, and it could be said that there were very few people like Fatty Luo who could balance their realm and cultivation. Thus, it was very rare for a smith to be able to protect themselves in this kind of situation. From a distance, Wang Ling and Lai Mengmeng saw that the heads of these minions were so fragile in Fatty Luo's hands that they turned into pissing beef balls with one squeeze. Because of the skybomb grenade that grenade-throwing senior immortal had thrown earlier, the nearby zombie minions had heard the commotion and come over, and more zombies had gathered. These zombies have probably been strengthened again. Their recovery abilities are too strong. After a while of slaughter, grenade-throwing senior immortal and Fatty Luo started to pant as they realized a very serious problem. In this game space, which had been combined with an illusion spell, there was a serious lack of spirit energy. They had been consuming it all this time, and if they didn't replenish it, they would run out sooner or later. Because of the lack of spirit energy, Fatty Luo was clearly feeling a little weak. Suddenly, there was a loud rumble in front of them, and a figure was swiftly approaching them. A big guy is coming. Fatty Luo's eyes widened in disbelief. This was a Voldemort, and it was astonishingly fast. Fatty Luo couldn't keep up with it. Although he didn't know how strong this Voldemort was, in terms of speed alone, it had already surpassed the soul formation stage. After all, this was an illusion set up by an itinerant immortal almighty, and the situation was more troublesome than grenade-throwing senior immortal had expected. Let's hide in the cupboard, how about? Lai Mengmeng suggested again. But before Lai Mengmeng could finish speaking, Wang Ling had already stepped forward. This Voldemort had come in a menacing manner. Its limbs were well developed, and the tendons in its arms and legs were as solid as a horned dragon's. Its eyes were already distorted, and the corners of its eyes were completely torn apart to reveal the whites of its eyes. Its dark red pupils stared straight at Wang Ling, meeting his gaze. A few seconds later, this Voldemort instantly broke out in a cold sweat. Then it straightaway turned its head, opened the iron cupboard at the back, and directly shrank inside. Seeing this scene, Lai Mingming's mind instantly flashed with a black question mark emoji. According to the game mechanism, shouldn't they be hiding in the cupboard? Chapter 269. As Lai Mengmeng had said, the zombies in Escape were divided into 3 categories: minions, fatties, and the last category, Voldemort. Like in conventional zombie blockbusters, zombies lacked intelligence. The reason why Voldemort was ranked the highest in the game wasn't just because of its extremely fast movement speed. The most important thing was that Voldemort still retained some intelligence and knew how to judge danger. So the moment it met Wang Ling's gaze, the Voldemort's thoughts began to spin, and the scenes in its mind flashed past like a movie. It was often said that no matter what kind of creature it was, some beautiful things would flash before their eyes when they faced death. But this Voldemort very quickly came to its senses. At the same time, sweat poured out like a fountain, and it began to avert Wang Ling's gaze, whether intentionally or unintentionally. That was just a teenager who didn't seem to have any lethality. But intuition told Voldemort that this person was very dangerous and that it would die. In that instant, Voldemort felt a great sense of oppression. Every step Wang Ling took toward it made it feel an invisible pressure, as if an invisible force was strangling its throat. So in the next moment, Voldemort made a decision: hide in the cabinet. As for why it hid in the cabinet, because the game itself was designed this way. Apart from some traps in the game's plot, cabinets in the early stages of the game were basically safe zones. Thus, Voldemort felt very safe hiding in the cabinet. But very quickly, this Voldemort died. Lai Mengmeng didn't even see how it had died at all. He just saw Wang Ling open the cabinet from a distance of about 2 or 3 meters away. Wang Ling gently squeezed his palm, and with a bang, green blood directly burst out. Although Lai Mengmeng didn't understand exactly what had happened, he could basically tell that this was probably the legendary open cabinet kill. But it seemed like the plot was the other way around. According to the game's plot, shouldn't it be the zombies who open the cabinet? Open cabinet kill also had to follow the basic rules. After dealing with this Voldemort, Wang Ling gently placed his hands on Fatty Luo and grenade-throwing senior immortal shoulders. In a flash, the after-effects of not paying attention to replenishing his spirit energy, which had resulted in him using up too much spirit energy, instantly disappeared. "I've recovered." Fatty Luo clenched his fists and once again sighed in his heart at Wang Ling's strength. Although people in the circle had always called Wang Ling a perfected person, Fatty Luo had once doubted Wang Ling's true realm, or rather, his true strength, which was far from being as simple as a perfected person. In the habitual thinking of most cultivators, the level represented everything, but in fact, it was not. Every cultivator had their own latent source of power. This source of power would not normally be triggered, but could often display great power at critical moments. Because of this, the cultivation world had always been full of all kinds of legends about people who could fight beyond their level. As for how great Wang Ling's potential source of power was, both Fatty Luo and Grenade Throwing felt that it was a mystery. Wang Ling looked ahead. The originally empty corridor was littered with broken corpses, and the walls were stained red with blood from the explosion. This scene was extremely impactful. Lai Mingming didn't know exactly what had happened. He only knew that he and Wang Ling seemed to have gotten into trouble together. However, this was a matter of the cultivation circle after all, and Lai Mingming felt that it was too far away from him. And no matter what happened, the most important thing now was that he couldn't leave. Lai Mingming frowned and looked a little worried. "Brother Song, just think of this as a game. Leave the rest to us." Grenade-throwing senior immortal comforted him on the side. Lai Mingming swallowed, and his Adam's apple bobbed as he said, "We've taken care of this bunch of minions on the first floor. Let's go to that crazy woman's husband's ward first and see if there are any other clues." Grenade-throwing senior immortal and Fatty Luo nodded, and under Lai Mingming's lead, they hurried to the second floor of the hospital. Lai Mingming was the only person who had played the demo version of this game. Although it was just a simplified version of the plot, the game map was the same, and he was relatively familiar with the environment. Along the way, Lai Mingming didn't know why his footsteps had become a lot lighter. When he walked, he felt as if there was a force supporting him under his feet. Even the feeling of stepping on the ground had become different. There was a kind of soft feeling. Furthermore, he realized that the puncture on the back of his hand, which had been pricked by the needle outside the hospital, had actually healed. In fact, this was the effect of the protective light membrane that Wang Ling had cast on him. Although Lai Mingming was wearing long johns, his head, hands, and feet weren't protected. Wang Ling didn't know what other accidents might happen in this situation, so he simply wrapped a membrane around Lai Mingming. As long as this membrane wasn't pierced, there was no need to worry about Lai Mingming's safety at all. When they reached the top of the stairs to the second floor, Lai Mingming held the night vision camera and looked at the wall strangely. He noticed that there was something on the wall that looked like a pattern, but in the demo version, it had clearly been a white wall. I don't think I've seen this before." Lai Mingming pointed at the pattern. Fatty Luo also noticed it, and his eyes instantly narrowed, because this pattern wasn't simple. Wang Ling took a closer look and saw that under the seemingly messy and disorderly arrangement, all the patterns had been arranged in an orderly fashion to form an array pattern. This was a complicated operation that could only be used when setting up a huge array. Wang Ling seemed to have already understood the trick of the game's illusion spell. After the USB drive had been linked to the computer, the powerful illusion spell that the other party had refracted through the computer screen was actually just a pretense. The real endpoint was the Taoist spell array that had been implanted in the game. This kind of array could turn an illusory world into an independent space. In other words, the game world they were currently in was actually a real space that had been transformed by an array. It was a little similar to a small world, but its spatial structure and nomological laws were simpler. Furthermore, through this array pattern, Wang Ling could already confirm Fatty Luo's previous guess. They weren't the only group that had been sucked into this game space. The space formed by this array was a parallel structure, and there were other people in the same environment but in a different space. Wang Ling gazed deeply at this array pattern, and Fatty Luo and Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal were also lost in deep thought. Fatty Luo stretched out his hand and gently stroked it. He could clearly feel a bump on the surface. Chapter 270. Has Brother Luo seen this array before? Asked Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. Actually, he also felt that this array seemed a little familiar. There had been a similar photo on the news more than 10 years ago, but he couldn't recall it. Senior Immortal, do you remember the Heavenly God primary school incident from 12 years ago? Fatty Luo suddenly mentioned a key term. Next to him, Fatty Luo and Lai Meng Meng were suddenly enlightened. Only Wang Ling was stupefied. Heavenly God primary school incident? What was that? 12 years ago. He had only been 4 years old at the time, right? It was a major terrorist attack back then. A group of children were teleported to an old primary school building. At the behest of the person who had cast the array, the children who had been caught in the illusion ended up killing each other inside. Fatty Luo frowned. The reason why I'm so sure this is the same array pattern that was captured in the news back then is because there's something similar between the incident back then and today's. The parents of the children who were killed back then were all weaponsmiths. Heavenly God Primary School was also a very famous training school for weaponsmiths back then. Sure enough, everything has to do with weaponsmiths. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal sighed. Lai Mengming felt like he had heard something incredible. He remembered that he had only graduated from university a few years ago when the incident happened. But it seems that someone survived, right? There was indeed one person who survived the incident back then. She was the teacher of that group of children. But according to the police investigation, the teacher wasn't a suspect in the incident and was also one of the victims, Fatty Luo said as he rubbed his chin. Then how did this teacher escape? I heard that the teacher made a sword out of mud on the spot, and with one slash, she directly split open the space. But unfortunately, it took her too long to make the sword out of mud, and she wasn't able to save the children. Made a sword out of mud? Wang Ling's eyebrows twitched slightly as he suddenly recalled what Boss Tan had said about the little girl who had made the stone ghost mask out of mud. But could it be the same person? When they entered the second floor, Wang Ling could clearly feel that there were fewer random soldiers here than on the first floor. During the fierce battle on the first floor, just now, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal Skybomb Grenade had probably attracted the minions on the second floor to the first floor, and they had been eliminated in passing. Although there were still 3 or 4 of them hiding in the dark on the second floor, there were nothing to be afraid of. On the way, Lai Mengming held the night vision camera and curiously observed the surrounding scenery, afraid that he would leave behind a clue similar to the array pattern from before. Seeing Wang Ling walking silently at the front on his own, he suddenly turned around and asked Fatty Luo and Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal curiously, "By the way, how do Brother Grenade-throwing and this fat uncle know our Ling Ling?" The corners of Fatty Luo's mouth twitched. "My full name is Luo Chuang. Also, I'm actually the same age as your brother Grenade-throwing." This time, it was Lai Mengming's mouth that twitched. Fatty Luo really looked too old. He had thought that the gap between cultivators and ordinary people was actually very big, but after careful observation, Lai Mengming suddenly felt that this wasn't the case. Whether it was cultivators or ordinary people, there was always someone who looked like a parent but was actually a student. Lai Mengming suddenly recalled his youth when he had been at school. Sighing in his heart, Lai Mengming corrected the way he addressed them before asking, "Then, Brother Grenade-throwing and Brother Luo, how do you know our Ling Ling?" In Lai Mengming's opinion, Wang Ling was actually a rather cold and aloof person, the kind of person who didn't make friends very easily. Lai Mengming remembered that when he had first entered the Wang family, he had taken the initiative to greet Wang Ling a few times, but Wang Ling had always had an expressionless expression on his face. It always reminded Lai Mengming of those emotionless statues of gods that he had worshipped in the temple during the New Year. The expression on his face was exactly the same. Do you know about a thing called a forum? Speaking of his friendship with Wang Ling, it was before the chat group had been set up, when the cultivation forum had just been set up, and it actually took a long time to talk about it. Grenade-throwing senior immortal thought for a bit. I remember back then, when our forum was first set up, it was a big hit on the internet. Because some big shots would often come to the forum to hold online seminars, it attracted a lot of school students. After that, some schools specially bought the copyright for our online seminars and made them into handouts for students to use. Over time, there were a lot of advertisers who wanted to sponsor our forum and invest in it. Then, there was a small snack manufacturer who sold crispy noodle snacks. Oh, Lai Mingming suddenly understood. When he heard this, or to be exact, when he heard the words crispy noodle snacks, Lai Mingming was already completely aware of what had happened. Senior Immortal and Brotherling's friendship is naturally very deep. I only met him recently. Fatty Luo looked at Lai Mingming and chuckled. By the way, what do you think of Brother Ling, Brother Song? Lai Mingming cupped his chin in his hand as he thought carefully. Then, covering his mouth, he whispered in Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's ear, "Actually, I've always felt that he's a pretty cool person on the inside. When I look for him online, he always sends me ellipses. Brother Grenade-throwing, don't you think that all cool people on the inside like to send ellipses?" Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal almost couldn't agree with this, and nodded repeatedly like a chicken pecking at rice. At that moment, the two of them reached a consensus. Just like Lai Mingming had said, Grenade-throwing felt that chatting with Wang Ling was too much effort. Every time, he had to figure out Wang Ling's intentions from those ellipses. Apart from that, our Ling Ling is actually a pretty good kid. He's handsome, has long legs, and has a good brain. The key is that you only need to give him a few crispy noodle snacks to keep him alive. Raising Wang Ling at home saves both worry and money. The only bad thing about him is that you can't touch him carelessly, otherwise he might explode. Staring at Wang Ling's back, Lai Mingming heaved a deep sigh. If only Ling Ling was a cat, I would definitely hug and suck it every day. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, Fatty Luo. After Lai Mingming said this, the scene clearly fell into a dead silence. Roughly 2 minutes later, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal copied Lai Mingming's action of covering his mouth just now and whispered in his ear, "Hey Chem, I'll tell you a secret. Lai Mingming, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. Brotherling might be quite far away from us, but at this distance he can actually hear what we're saying." Looking in Wang Ling's direction, Lai Mingming abruptly realized that Wang Ling had actually quickened his pace. Chapter 271. There was a village between Jinghua City and Songhai City. After leaving Songhai City, Boss Tan's younger brother, Tan Qian, had headed straight for this place. The mountain behind the village was called Nine Boundaries Mountain, and there was a modern Taoist temple on it. This was actually one of Immortal Mansion's strongholds. Given Tan Qian's current rank, he had absolutely no idea where Immortal Mansion's headquarters was located. Only when he became the Eastern Branch's chief would he be able to find out the location of Immortal Mansion's headquarters during the high-level meeting that was held once every 10 years. 2 days after his return, Tan Qian used the bottle of sleeping pills that Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had given him to perfectly suppress his Panwu Immortal Martial Arts addiction. The Panwu Immortal Martial Arts was a forbidden art that consumed a cultivator's essence, qi, and spirit, numbed the body, and stimulated the 9 orifices' spirit points to hypnotize themselves. The most difficult problem to solve was its addiction. Sure enough, as his big brother Tan Simon had said, although his strength had weakened a lot after he stopped cultivating the Panwu Immortal Martial Arts, his mental state was clearly much better. That day, the sleeping pills wore off, and Tan Qian woke up from his deep sleep. When he returned to the backyard, he heard the Eastern Branch chief cursing in his room. Just as he stepped inside, he saw a large screen in the room. The Eastern Branch chief was sitting in front of it and working frantically on a controller. "Tan Qian, you're here just in time. Quick, help me take a look. What on earth is the problem?" Tan Qian stared at the screen in bewilderment. "What's this?" A moment later, his pupils abruptly dilated because he actually saw Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal on the screen. Knowing that Tan Qian had come in, the chief didn't even turn his head. This is the first step in Master's master plan. Using the USB drive to secretly cast a great illusion spell in conjunction with a space array, we can gather all the currently known weaponsmiths together and find the strongest one. But because there are too many spaces, Master can't manage them all on his own, so we're in charge of this space now. We can use the controller to modify the settings of this space at will. Tan Xian understood. To put it bluntly, the current Eastern Branch Chief was actually the god behind this space. It was very obvious that this was a big deal. Tan Xian's impression was that anything that involved grenade-throwing senior immortal, this great death-courting senior in the cultivation circle, definitely wasn't simple. The Eastern Branch Chief pointed to a fat man on the screen. This time, our target is this person. The boss of Fatty Luo's metal tools, Luo Chuang, came from a family of blacksmiths and wasn't weak either. However, he had accidentally brought Great Death-Courting Senior along when he was opening up the space. In order to test the strength of the owner of the villa that I asked you to investigate last time, I also sent a USB flash drive to that villa. Realization instantly dawned on Tan Xian. He knew that legendary Ling Zhenren might also be involved in this matter. Although he had never seen this Ling Zhenren in person, he had seen his spirit sword, which had almost turned him into a salt and pepper mantis shrimp with one slash. Even if Tan Xian hadn't seen Wang Ling's strength for himself, he had already had an idea at that time. This person was not simple. Tan Xian even felt that Ling Zhenren was stronger than the master of a mortal mansion. Tan Xian couldn't help breaking out in a cold sweat. So what's the problem now, Chief? The Eastern Branch Chief's face was very black and could completely be described as scorched earth. There's a popular game called PlayerUnknown's Battleground recently. Have you played it? Tan Xian. I have, but I'm a noob. Then, the Eastern Branch Chief sank into deep thought. He cupped his chin in his hands and pondered for a long time before replying. I'm now controlling this space, and I feel like I've encountered an immortal who can suck people in, lock on, accelerate, and self-destruct. Tan Xian, Eastern Branch Chief. Not only were the minions I summoned in the space instantly killed by the other party, even the strength in Voldemort I created were so scared that they turned around and ran. Tan Xian, Eastern Branch Chief. Furthermore, this group of people doesn't play according to the game's plot at all. They wreak havoc in the space without the slightest scruple. Tan Xian. Was this done by that Great Death-Courting Senior? It was done by the person in that villa. The point is that I don't even know who he is. As he said this, the Eastern Branch Chief switched the screen to Wang Ling, and then Tan Xian saw a huge mosaic on the screen. At that moment, the great shielding spell was once again put to good use in the game space. Wang Ling couldn't help sneezing. He vaguely sensed that someone was talking about him behind his back. But now wasn't the time to care. According to the plot, Lai Mingming successfully led Wang Ling and the others to the ward where the woman's husband was staying. The array patterns that had been engraved on the wall on the first floor actually extended all the way here. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal crouched down and stroked the array patterns as he carefully felt them out. Brotherling, this set of array patterns seems a little different from the ones we've seen before. The minute difference between the array patterns was an indescribable feeling. Only cultivators who had cultivated for more than 1,000 years could clearly sense it. The array patterns of a large magic array were usually laid out in sections. They might look messy, but they also had a core. This is the core array pattern. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal stared at the array pattern with a confident expression. As long as we cut off this core array pattern, we can at least block this great illusion spell and affect the order of the space. Who knows, we might be able to get out. But it won't be easy to cut off the array pattern. This is the core array pattern set up by an itinerant immortal, and they must have added a recovery property to it. It's best if we can directly cut it off at the root, otherwise it might grow back. Fatty Luo frowned. But we don't have any weapons with us right now. My magic treasures are all in the shop. Now that we're trapped in this space, the connection between our magic treasures has failed, and we can't directly summon them over. At that moment, Both of them turned to look at Wang Ling at almost the same time. Grenade-throwing senior immortal. Brother Ling, do you have a solution? Wang Ling nodded, his eyes fixed on the air. A moment later, there was a wave of energy that shook the air and the ground. Fatty Luo and Grenade-throwing senior immortal were extremely astonished. This momentum was really too great. It imperceptibly gave rise to a great sense of oppression. Furthermore, this aura was very familiar, and they already knew what was going to happen. In just a few seconds, a crack actually appeared in the air in front of Wang Ling's eyes, and endless sword chi poured out of it to sweep through the space. Chapter 272. The space shook violently, and dust fell from the ceiling. The familiar brownish-yellow sword light seeped out of the crack in the air and directly illuminated the entire space. In a normal situation, spirit swords were invisible to ordinary people, and Lai Ming couldn't see them at all. But Jinka was very special, because it looked like a peachwood sword that could be found everywhere on the market to ward off evil spirits. Fatty Luo had just discovered this, and he was especially surprised. Lord Jinka! Jinka! The moment he saw Jinka appear, Fatty Luo's voice trembled. He was too excited and marveled at Wang Ling's ability. What kind of power was this to be able to tear open a crack in this completely isolated space and summon a spirit sword by force? Fatty Luo felt that this was already completely beyond his understanding. The moment Jinka was summoned, Grenade-throwing very tacitly tapped Lai Mingming's neck lightly and used an acupoint to directly knock him out. An ordinary person wouldn't be able to withstand the mental pressure of tearing open a crack in space to summon a spirit sword. This was no longer a physical attack that Long Johns or Long Johns could withstand. If Lai Mingming was affected here, it was very likely that he would suffer from dementia in his later years. Too strong. When Fatty Luo saw Jinka firmly gripped in Wang Ling's hand as sword chi continued to erupt in the air, he felt his face tremble uncontrollably. This aura had come and gone very quickly. Fatty Luo felt that Jinka was really too cool, and that it was a perfect match for Ling Junren. When Wang Ling held Jinka and their auras blended together, there was actually a feeling of being one with nature. This was a higher realm than being one with the sword. When will I be able to have a magic treasure as compatible as Lord Jinka and Ling Junren's? Fatty Luo blinked, his heart full of envy. After all, this kind of thing could only be encountered by chance. He had collected and made a lot of magic treasures, but the problem of compatibility wasn't something that could be solved through simple forging. The compatibility between a spirit sword and its owner was a very profound subject. Fatty Luo felt that in layman's terms, it was like choosing a wife by looking at the 8 characters of the horoscope. After 10 breaths, the space was finally completely calm. Holding Jinka in his hand, Wang Ling aimed the blade at the array pattern on the ground. Just as he was about to slash down, the runes seemed to come to life and moved on their own. Not good. The formation spirit has been roused and is trying to escape. Fatty Luo instantly cried out. For formation set up by an itinerant immortal like this, apart from the complicated formation patterns, it would most likely have an array spirit. In order to maintain the safety and stability of the array spirit would shift the position of the core array pattern every once in a while. But now, the array spirit had been awakened in advance. You want to destroy me? Not so easy. In this space, as long as I don't want to die, I can be indestructible. The formation spirit laughed proudly. This large array formation was not to be underestimated. It could carry illusions and multiple layers of parallel space. It belonged to the advanced array formation of a space flow. Of course, this array spirit was not an ordinary being. As soon as he finished speaking, the runes that were originally engraved in the room turned into a wandering dragon-like spirit that instantly floated up and fiercely rushed out of the door. It was as fast as a bolt of lightning, and Grenade-throwing senior immortal and Fatty Luo had no time to catch up. Wang Ling didn't look sideways. He merely frowned and directly stamped his foot down. Before the array spirit could break through the door, its body was accurately stepped on by Wang Ling. Wang Ling had only stepped on the last bit of the array pattern, which was like a small tail, but the array spirit was aghast to find that it actually couldn't move even half a step. Wang Ling's speed had already surpassed the array spirit's imagination, and the force of his stomp was like a nail that firmly pinned it to the ground. Brother Ling, to be able to operate such a large array, this array spirit is no ordinary creature. It would be great if we could capture it alive. Grenade-throwing senior immortal suddenly said. The value of an itinerant immortal array spirit was simply immeasurable. Generally speaking, array flags and an array creator were needed to operate an array, and when the creator wasn't around, the array spirit could replace the creator. But subduing a powerful array spirit was as difficult as ascending to heaven. This was a product of nomological laws, and the principle was a little similar to that of a sword spirit. Since ancient times, there had been only a handful of arrays that could give birth to an array spirit on their own initiative. But it seemed that Grenade-throwing senior immortal had spoken a little too late. When Wang Ling had made his move, he hadn't intended to keep this array spirit at all. Wang Ling hated everything that disturbed his peaceful life. Whether it was the mastermind behind the scenes or the array spirit in front of him, it was all the same. So since he wanted to live a peaceful life, he didn't need to care about what would happen next. Whether this array spirit was strong or weak had nothing to do with Wang Ling. His original goal was to get everyone out of the space safely. Wang Ling raised his hand, and the spirit sword in his hand instantly lit up. This brown sword light lingered around Jinka's body. It wasn't bright. On the contrary, it could be said to be very gentle. But the oppressive feeling in that gentleness was very real. Fatty Luo only felt that Jinka was really at ease. Nothing could be more gentle than this. The array spirit had a fearful expression on its face as it instinctively sensed the danger of this peach with spirit sword. It hurriedly opened its mouth and begged bitterly, "Exalted immortal, please let me go." I had eyes but failed to recognize Mount Tai. Wang Ling didn't even look at the array spirit as he directly swung his sword down. The array spirit didn't even have time to cry out as the sword light directly pierced its body. In the next moment, its ghostly body, along with the core array pattern hidden inside, cracked and shattered. Brother Ling, seeing this scene, Grenade-throwing senior immortal and Fatty Luo couldn't help sucking in cold breaths. An array spirit at itinerant immortal level had been cut down just like that. Furthermore, it had died after just one slash. This was probably what a big shot was like. Grenade-throwing senior immortal's heart ached. If he could subdue such a powerful array spirit, it would definitely be a powerful little brother. But very quickly, Grenade-throwing senior immortal felt relieved, because what Wang Ling had done wasn't wrong. He had always been this kind of person from the beginning. The array spirit was destroyed, the core array pattern was destroyed, and the game space also started to crack inch by inch. Bits of sunlight seeped in through the dark space and shone on Wang Ling's face. Grenade-throwing senior immortal and Fatty Luo stood on the side and looked at him. They didn't know if it was because the crisis had been resolved, but they felt that Wang Ling's serious face seemed a lot more at ease. Chapter 273. When Lai Mingming woke up, he found himself lying on Wang Ling's bed, while Wang Ling was sitting at the desk and seriously flipping through some study materials. What was going on? He remembered that he had been playing a game with Wang Ling just now. How had he fallen asleep? Lai Mingming got up and rubbed the space between his eyebrows, feeling a little headache coming on. Wang Ling was silent with his back to Lai Mingming. When he had left the game space, he had completely erased Lai Mingming's memory of it. Now, Lai Mingming's memory stopped at just before he had started playing the game. A scheme played by an itinerant immortal almighty had been severed by his sword, which would definitely involve a lot of things later on. As an ordinary person, Wang Ling didn't want to drag Lai Mingming into this. At that moment, there was a knock on the door. After a few seconds, Mother Wong pushed it open and came in with some fruit. She saw that Lai Ming Ming was awake. "Little Song, you're awake? I heard from Wong Ling just now that you suddenly fell asleep while playing the game with him." "I fell asleep?" Lai Ming Ming pointed at himself in disbelief. "That's right. Eat some fruit first. I made some chicken soup. You must drink some when you go downstairs later." Mother Wong sighed and frowned as she looked at Lai Ming Ming very seriously. Although it's not easy to do anything these days, and it has to burn the midnight oil with an author, young people should still pay more attention to their health. Nowadays, aren't there many young people who get sick from staying up late? Lai Ming Ming, Mother Wong, look, sometimes you young people like to get pimples when you stay up late. If you have a pimple, you'll have to squeeze it. After squeezing the pimple, if you're not careful, it will become infected. If you encounter an infectious disease, you might die. Some time ago, there was a young man who seemed to have died like this. Lai Ming Ming was so frightened that he touched his face. "Sis, where did you see this?" Mother Wong. Moments, the title even says that 99% of Huaxia people have read it. How can this be fake? Lai Ming Ming, Mother Wong. In short, you must pay attention to your rest in the future. If you're tired, don't force yourself. Lai Ming Ming said, "Sis is right. I'll definitely pay attention." Mother Wong. From today onwards, I'm going to make scientific plans and reasonable arrangements for you and that man of mine. You're going to be well nourished, and you're going to develop morally, intellectually, physically, and aesthetically. Lai Ming Ming didn't dare refute her at all. He suddenly thought of that previous game. "Sister, let me ask you something. Did you see the USB flash drive that Wong Ling collected earlier?" Mother Wong pointed at the trash can at Wong Ling's feet. "A USB drive? I threw it away." Ling Ling said you suddenly fainted, and when you fell to the ground, you directly hit the USB drive and broke it. "Oh, my chicken soup," Nurse Wong said earnestly, looked at the watch in her hand, remembered that her chicken soup was still boiling downstairs, and hurriedly went downstairs. Lai Ming Ming glanced at the completely shattered USB drive in the trash can. At once, his legs turned to jelly, and he knelt beside the bucket, tears streaming down his face. He felt his heart, liver, spleen, lungs, and kidneys aching. What had he done? Looking at Lai Ming Ming out of the corner of his eye, Wong Ling actually felt a little apologetic in his heart, because this USB drive was deliberately stepped on by him. At the same time, there had just been an explosion at the Taoist temple on Nine Boundary Mountain between Jinghua and Songhai City. Billowing black smoke poured out of the Taoist temple's windows and doors. The Eastern Branch Chief walked out of the Taoist temple with Tan Xian's help. F***K. What the hell happened just now? The Eastern Branch Chief coughed violently, and black smoke spewed out of his mouth and nose. Based on the scene before the explosion, he had seen the pile of mosaics on the screen suddenly emit a brownish-yellow spirit light. Not long after that, there had been a loud boom in the room, and the entire screen had suddenly exploded. Only Tan Xian's heart was as clear as a mirror. Although he couldn't clearly see what was behind that pile of mosaics, he had seen that familiar spirit light before. With one glance, Tan Xian could tell that it was Lord Jinka who had come. Thus, the moment he saw the spirit light, Tan Xian already had a feeling in his heart, and very cleverly took a few steps back. Sure enough, not long after he stepped back, the screen in front of the chief suddenly exploded. After using a cleansing talisman on himself to wash the dirt off his body and face, the miserable Eastern Branch Chief changed into a new set of clothes. Thinking of the explosion just now, the Eastern Branch Chief still had some lingering fear in his heart. He could see that it wasn't a problem with the equipment, but something had gone wrong inside the space, which had affected the space and caused it to explode. Fortunately, he had the foundation of his realm and the protection of the Taoist robe. Apart from being a little dirty, there wasn't much of a problem. Of course, if it had been the instantaneous power of the explosion just now, everyone below the nascent soul stage would have died here. But what on earth had happened just now? To be able to destroy the space so quickly under the great magic array that Master had personally set up, the identity of the person who had destroyed the space was definitely not simple. Do you understand the situation? The Eastern Branch Chief was puzzled, but even more shocked. Tan Xian nodded and replied, "In addition to our Eastern Branch, the Southern, Western, and Northern branches situations are similar. The screens in front of the three chiefs all exploded at the same time." All exploded? The Eastern Branch Chief turned pale with shock. "Yes, all exploded," Tan Xian replied. "What on earth was this thing that could actually destroy all parallel spaces in an instant?" The Eastern Branch Chief felt a layer of goosebumps appear on his back. "Did Master send any letters?" "Yes." Tan Xian handed over a piece of paper. "This is a test report that Master just sent over using the 10,000-mile talisman. It records some of the fluctuations in the space before the explosion." The Eastern Branch Chief took the report and carefully examined some of the data recorded on the test report. According to Master's speculation, the space should have been destroyed by some Dharma treasure, most likely a spirit sword-type Dharma treasure, which cut off the core array pattern and directly destroyed the array spirit, Tan Xian said. Sure enough, the Eastern Branch Chief sighed. The data marked on the report are all Dharma treasures' combat power indexes estimated using modern precision instruments. The common combat power index of the lowest foundation establishment stage spirit sword is in the range of 1,000 to 5,000. If it's a golden core stage spirit sword, the combat power index will exceed 10,000 or even tens of thousands. Nascent soul and soul formation stage spirit swords will reach hundreds of thousands. And Master said to destroy this layer of space. This spirit sword is stronger than a soul formation stage spirit sword. It has to be at least a first-grade holy artifact. A first-grade holy artifact's combat power index is usually in the millions. Speaking up to this point, Tan Xian took a deep breath and pointed to the report. And the spirit sword that just destroyed this layer of space, the instrument calculated the combat power index at the bottom of the report. The Eastern Branch Chief looked in the direction Tan Xian was pointing. Chapter 274. Staring at the 9 question marks, the Eastern Branch Chief sank into deep thought for a long time. The Eastern Branch Chief. What's this? This is the monitoring data on the spirit sword, but according to Master, its combat strength has already exceeded the range of the instrument, said Tan Xian. Is that so? The Eastern Branch Chief frowned deeply. Just now, Master ordered us to thoroughly investigate leads on the spirit sword's owner. Investigate leads? Doesn't that give us a big advantage? The Eastern Branch Chief laughed cruelly. At the very least, we know that the owner of this spirit sword has something to do with the people living in that villa. Sure enough, I was right to send you Little Tan to sound them out back then. My venerable self is so smart. Ha! Tan Xian sweated. Not necessarily, Chief. According to my investigation, the people living in that villa are a very ordinary family. I don't care. Apart from the USB drive sent to that Fatty Luo's hardware store, this villa is the only game space we've been monitoring this time. Even if it has nothing to do with this family, it might be related to their relatives. This is the only lead we have right now. The Eastern Branch Chief directly waved his hand. This time, I'll investigate it myself. I'd rather kill everything by mistake than let one go. Tan Xian. Chief, are you really not going to think about it? As long as my venerable self gets the lead first and reports it to Master, I'll be promoted to an elder of a mortal mansion soon. The Eastern Branch Chief looked at Tan Xian and patted him on the shoulder. Once I'm promoted to an elder, Little Tan, you'll be the next Eastern Branch Chief. Tan Xian sighed deeply in his heart. He had to report this matter to Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal first. It was June 26th on Sunday in the 9th week of the semester. In the morning, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal came to the door with freshly grown broccoli. The old man was bathing in the morning light as he watered the plants at the door with a smile on his face. Yesterday, he had specially gone to Fong Xing's family's noodle shop to compare notes on his cooking skills. The old man had always pursued a high level of culinary skill and was naturally in a particularly good mood to meet someone who could compare notes with him. Just thinking about it made him happy. "Good morning, old Senior Wong." Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal greeted him respectfully. "Yo, it's Xiaolei. Have you had breakfast?" The old man raised the shower head in his hand and responded enthusiastically. I've already eaten, old Senior Wong." Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal chuckled. "Senior, you're smiling. What are you so happy about?" "Yesterday, I went to Ling Ling's classmate's house. His family runs a noodle shop. Moreover, that classmate's father has some cooking skills, so I sparred with him for a bit." The old man stroked his beard and recalled seriously. "I heard that his father became a special class chef at the age of 13. He usually covered his special class medal with a white cloth. When I went there yesterday, there was an acolyte standing next to his father. He went up and tore off the white cloth. I just saw the special chef's name shining brightly. Tisk, it's really amazing." Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. "By the way, why did Xiaolei come here today?" the old man asked. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal bowed. "I'm looking for Brother Ling. Is he here?" "It's the weekend, of course he's at home," the old man replied. "But it seems that Ling Ling has locked himself in his room today and hasn't come out much." "Brother Ling is in seclusion?" Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal scared. Seclusion was usually either to consolidate a realm or to break through to another realm. To him, it was actually quite rare for Brother Ling to be in seclusion. Could it be that Brother Ling was going to break through again? But Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal very quickly rejected this idea. He looked at Grandfather Wong and asked, "Senior, do you know what happened to Brother Ling? He seems to be having a heart-to-heart talk with Jinka." Grandfather Wong replied. "There's always a day every month when Ling Ling locks himself up in his room like this to have a heart-to-heart talk with Jinka." Hearing this, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's eyes suddenly widened, and he asked in horror, "Brother Ling can have a heart-to-heart talk?" No wonder Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was so shocked. After all, Ling Jinren speaking was a rare and miraculous thing. In Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's eyes, the probability of this happening was like a sow climbing a tree. But the way Ling Ling has a heart-to-heart talk is very strange. He just holds Jinka and doesn't say anything. Speaking up to this point, the old man also had his own concerns. Ling Ling's father and mother have always been worried that Ling Ling might have a psychological problem. "Little A, you have a lot of ideas. Do you have a way to find out what Ling Ling and little Jingzi are talking about?" Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's face was instantly troubled. He hadn't had time to learn an advanced spell like the mind-reading ability yet. But very quickly, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal thought of a way. "Old Senior Wong, wait. Let me call my friend." Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal took out his cell phone, and the signal directly crossed mountains and rivers to Little Black's border laboratory. "Hello, Little Black. Can you lend me the mind-reading software you developed last time?" "Yes, I need it urgently. Can you send it directly to my cell phone?" On the other end of the line, Little Black was clearly a little hesitant. "But Brother Lei, this software is still in its trial phase. You mean you can't use it?" Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal deliberately laughed. "How is that possible? I meticulously developed this software, and it's connected to the mind-reading device in my lab remotely. As long as the software is there, it can read someone's mind and translate it." Little Black grit his teeth. "Since Brother Lei wants to try it, I'll send it to you now." Roughly 2 minutes later, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal saw the phone screen light up. An unknown file had been remotely located by Little Black and sent to Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's cell phone. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal bared his white teeth and looked at Old Man Wong excitedly. "Senior, I've done it. Let's go to Brother Ling's room and take a look." The old man was a little doubtful. "Well, will it work?" Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal opened the software and aimed the phone at the old man. After the software did some monitoring, a string of words appeared on the interface. "Ling Ling won't be angry, right?" The old man took a look and was stupefied. "It actually works. Of course, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was full of confidence. The two of them went all the way up to the second floor to Wang Ling's room. It was completely silent inside. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal aimed the phone at the door. Because the door had detected 2 waves of energy fluctuations, the software had used the English code names A and B to separate the people inside. A stood for Wang Ling, while B stood for Jinka. The old man leaned over curiously. What does it say? Roughly a minute later, the analysis came out. There were 3 conversations in total. A. Wang Ling, B. Jinka, Wang Ling, B. Jinka, Wang Ling, B. Jinka, old man Wang. What are they talking about? Chapter 275. There were actually many ways to increase the rapport between a spirit sword and its sword spirit. In the past, when spirit beasts and demon beasts were rampant, many cultivators would choose to use their spirit swords to kill as many spirit beasts and demon beasts as possible in order to increase their rapport and proficiency. This was the most effective and fastest method among all the methods. But now, the demon beasts had been blocked by the gate between worlds, and spirit beasts had become protected animals in various countries. So modern cultivators had figured out a unique way to increase their rapport with a spirit sword. For example, Dharmaraja's most common method was to use the godly thunder inheritance to give his spirit sword a light massage therapy. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, for example, had been obsessed with studying the broccoli that Grandfather Wang had given him, and had been soaking his spirit sword in the broccoli field all day. In contrast, Wang Ling's method was very simple. His method was to hold Jinka in the palm of his hand. Wang Ling called this method the holding you in the palm of my heart tacit understanding method. The name sounded old-fashioned and low-class, with a hint of the rural, non-mainstream Chinibu flavor. But Wang Ling felt that no matter how old-fashioned it was, it couldn't be more old-fashioned than the Golden Arches. Every month, Wang Ling would set aside one day to increase his rapport with Jinka, but it usually didn't take too long. After waiting downstairs for about an hour, Grenade-throwing saw Wang Ling come downstairs, and the first thing he did was mercilessly roll his eyes. This was a warning for Grenade-throwing's rude attempt to use the software to read his mind. This eye roll made Grenade-throwing's heart thump, and he sighed dejectedly in his heart. It looked like he could only offer up that treasured limited edition Shuangwanglian-flavored crispy noodle snack pack to make amends. Getting back to the point, the young man in white looked at Wang Ling solemnly and said, "Brother Ling, I'm here to retrieve the Demon King's arm that you mentioned last time." Wang Ling nodded. When Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had arrived at the entrance of the Wang family's small villa to chat with the old man, Wang Ling had already known the latter's purpose for this trip. The two of them arrived in the backyard one after the other. Loopy Toad was lying on the ground basking in the sun. When it saw little Master Ling, it very consciously moved away from its spot and wagged its tail as it chose to lie down at Wang Ling's feet again. Wang Ling opened his heavenly eye in the air and activated the power of world vision. At that moment, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal once again saw Wang Ling's pupils open like flower petals at close range. Because of the power of the heavenly eye, they were dyed a dark gold color. A moment later, as far as Wang Ling's eyes could see, spirit energy swirled up in a torrent, opening up a space like a vortex. Rumble. The white-clothed youth watched as a huge black shadow fell from the sky right in front of his feet. After that, even the ground caved in, unable to bear the enormous weight of the arm. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. This was the arm of a demon king, and furthermore, it was from the giant devil clan. Although he could already imagine how enormous it was when he saw it with his own eyes, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was still deeply frightened. This demon king's arms were so dense. If Immortal Toya hadn't personally told him about it, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal would never have thought that Wang Ling had used a door to snap them in half. Opening his heavenly eye, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal hurriedly withdrew the enormous demon king's arm into his field of vision. Although the arm had been snapped off a long time ago, its demon chi was still very strong. It hadn't been long since it had been released, but the flowers and plants nearby were already showing signs of withering. Fortunately, the old man didn't take care of the flowers and plants in the back garden very often. Otherwise, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal would have felt that he had suffered a huge loss by offending Old Man Wong. Even dozens of tons of broccoli wouldn't be able to save it. This Demon King's arm has a lot of value in development and utilization. When I get back, I'll hold a meeting to study it properly. After accepting the Demon King's arm, the white-clothed youth's heart was already more or less at ease. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal heaved a sigh of relief, but the expression on his face didn't relax in the slightest. Recalling what had happened in the game space yesterday, he turned to Wong Ling and asked, "Brother Ling, what do you think about what happened in that space yesterday?" In fact, even if Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal didn't say anything, Wong Ling's heart was as clear as a mirror. He knew that this matter had something to do with Immortal Mansion. Resolving this matter wasn't as easy as he had imagined, but it wasn't complicated either. He just needed to cut the weeds and pull out the roots. At this thought, Wong Ling narrowed his eyes. He recalled that a lot of trouble had recently arisen because of Immortal Mansion. Wong Ling had always had zero tolerance for this sort of thing that ruined his peaceful life again and again. As a good friend of many years, Grenade-throwing was well aware of Wong Ling's attitude. He took a deep breath and looked at Wong Ling. Actually, Tan Xian gave me a clue earlier. Immortal Mansion's Eastern Branch Chief is about to make a move. No matter what Brother Ling thinks, I will definitely risk my life to accompany you to the end. Wong Ling gazed into the white-clothed youth's eyes, and his pupils couldn't help revealing a rare coldness. That evening, there was a faint tremor on East Wong Road in front of the Wong family's small villa. The ground shook, startling many birds into flight. A figure descended in front of the villa with an intense pressure. When the figure landed, the ground cracked open, and endless spirit light swirled around him to form an invisible shield of Gang Chi. It shook the ground so hard that it shattered, and even the air seemed to distort. "It's here!" The middle-aged man, surrounded by spirit light and supported by Gang Chi, smiled coldly. He stared at the Wong family's small villa with an unprecedented murderous intent. He had been the Eastern Branch Chief for a whole 100 years. Now, as long as he could gather intelligence on this family, his promotion to a senior elder of Immortal Mansion was just around the corner. The corners of the middle-aged man's mouth couldn't help curling up. He had been waiting for this day for far too long. This was his best chance to be promoted to a senior level in 100 years, and also his closest chance. He couldn't miss this opportunity. The middle-aged man's gaze was fixed on the villa's entrance, and his murderous intent permeated the Wong family's villa without any disguise. About 2 minutes later, the door to the Wong family's villa opened. But the door didn't fully open, and only opened a crack before it stopped. Chapter 276. This sword light was definitely the same brown spirit light that had appeared on the screen before the space had exploded, the Eastern Branch Chief suddenly realized. Sure enough, it was as Master had analyzed. That spirit sword was very unusual. It was an indescribable feeling that was hard to describe in words. Before the sword light even got close, a great oppressive force enveloped him from afar. After familiarizing himself with this light, the Eastern Branch Chief finally saw the body of the spirit sword in it. This was actually a peachwood sword. It was just a peachwood sword. So why did it have such abnormal data as 9 question marks? Judging from the sword chi, this sword did indeed seem very strong. But the middle-aged man felt that there was probably something wrong with the instrument used to detect the combat strength of a magic weapon. In any case, since Master has found you, I can only take you back first. The Eastern Branch Chief frowned as he stared at the dazzling sword gleam. He raised his hand and took out a few small flags. The flagpoles of these flags were as black as ink and were covered with fine vein patterns. They spread out in the wind and swiftly enlarged to surround him. In the blink of an eye, a wave of spatial energy formed, turning into a barrier that resisted the pressure. Wang Ling and grenade-throwing senior immortal were in the bedroom on the second floor. Watching this scene from a distance, Wang Ling could tell at a glance that these flags were from ancient times at the very least, and were from the same era as the black dagger that the old devil had left behind. This immortal mansion actually has such a deep foundation. Grenade-throwing senior immortal couldn't help clicking his tongue and sighing. Because according to Tan Qian's report, the person who had come was just an Eastern Branch chief, who at best played the role of an outer sect elder. And such an outer sect elder actually had an ancient artifact in his hand. Just how rich was this group of inner sect disciples? With the protection of the magic flags, the middle-aged man felt a lot less pressure. He couldn't control these ancient magic flags 100%, and the power they could exert was very limited. But in his opinion, this barrier made up of ancient magic flags, which were comparable to first-class holy weapons, was enough to block the invasion of this sword chi. Furthermore, the protection of the magic flags wasn't his only goal. His ultimate goal was to capture this spirit sword. In ancient times, the Dharma flags hovering around him were powerful artifacts that could suppress sword spirits by capturing sword chi. My magic flag has captured countless spiritual swords in ancient times. So what if you're strong? The Eastern Branch chief stared at the surging brown spirit light in front of him and sneered. With a flip of his palm, specks of divine waves appeared, and the Dharma flags around him instantly scattered in all directions. With the power of the Dharma flags, the flagpoles lined up in the void and turned into a huge cage. It's the spirit-suppressing flag? Grenade-throwing senior immortal exclaimed as he recognized the magic flags. Many famous spirit swords on the list of swords once fell victim to this magic weapon. I heard that the person who created these spirit-subduing flags has an unusual relationship with old Demon Han. Wang Ling opened his heavenly eye to the extreme and looked at the spirit-subduing flags. From what grenade-throwing senior immortal could remember, this was probably the first time he had seen Wang Ling's heavenly eye up close. The golden petals in those pupils seemed to be gathering boundless spirit power, which gave off an unreal sense of fear. He didn't dare look directly at it, and could only observe it out of the corner of his eye. Wang Ling frowned deeply as he stared at the spirit-subduing flags in the void. All the magic weapons from ancient times that had appeared in the world now had one thing in common. They had all lost their weapon spirits. It was precisely because they were masterless objects without weapon spirits that some cultivators nowadays use them. An ancient magic weapon with a weapon spirit would never be able to be operated by a soul formation cultivator. But through his heavenly eye, Wang Ling could see many strange nomological laws hovering around the spirit-subduing flags. Thus, this magic weapon was very strange to Wang Ling. He felt that someone was remotely controlling the artifact, and that the Eastern Branch chief might not be the true owner of the artifact. This was something that Wang Ling felt was a little strange. At that moment, the cage formed by the spirit-subduing flags had already enveloped Jinka. The middle-aged man looked ahead with a calm expression on his face as he quietly waited for the Peachwood sword spirit to appear. A moment later, he saw the Peachwood sword's spirit light dissipate under the cage, and it gradually took on its original form. It was a child in a brown and white robe who looked to be only 10 years old, and was looking at him coldly with his fair little face. Looking up at the huge, spirit-subduing flag cage, Jinka sighed. No chat. He had thought that this was a magic weapon that could compete with him, which was why he had taken on its original form to personally experience it. But the reality was very disappointing. About 10 seconds later, this cage was like the pagoda-bearing Heavenly King's golden pagoda, which had captured demons. A purple light shone from below on Jinka's body. This was a special spirit light that could suppress most spirit sword spirits for a very short period of time. Illuminated by the purple spirit light, Jinka yawned and looked on indifferently. He didn't resist, and there wasn't the slightest ripple on his face. Success. Seeing that Jinka didn't move, the middle-aged man was overjoyed. The longer the purple light shone, the weaker the sword spirit would be. So he stood in the distance and watched as Jinka stood under the purple spirit light, as if it were a microwave oven. 5 minutes later, that's enough time. The middle-aged man was overjoyed as he slowly walked in Jinka's direction, feeling as refreshed as when he had collected vegetables when he had played Happy Farm. He was just one step away from being promoted to a high level of immortal mansion. He approached Jinka, formed a magic seal with his hands, and finally raised them high. Withdraw! With a loud shout, he followed the purple light and saw the sword spirit in front of him being drawn back into the cage bit by bit. The huge cage in the air gradually shrank until it was the size of a palm and fell into the Eastern Branch chief's hands. Just like that, he succeeded. Holding the cage, the middle-aged man was overjoyed. Everything had gone too smoothly. The whole process was very quiet. Wang Ling and grenade-throwing senior immortal were in the study on the second floor, watching everything with indifferent expressions on their faces. Deliberately getting Jinka arrested had been part of Wang Ling's plan. Lord Jinka has truly been wronged. Grenade-throwing senior immortal put his hands on his hips as he watched the middle-aged man laugh like a 200-kilogram child as he walked away. Now, they just had to wait for this Eastern Branch chief to take Jinka to Immortal Mansion's headquarters. As soon as Wang Ling received Jinka's signal, grenade-throwing senior immortal and Wang Ling would directly attack. Now, we just have to wait for Lord Jinka's signal. When the time comes, we'll directly fight the nouveau riche. Grenade-throwing senior immortal said. Oh, that's right, Brother Ling. Just now, the brothers and sisters in the group and Fatty Luo all said that they want to participate in this operation. Wang Ling, ? Grenade-throwing senior immortal. It's common sense to call your brothers and sisters when you're fighting a nouveau riche. Wang Ling. Chapter 277. Normal spirit swords would start training after they were a certain distance away from their masters, but Jinka was different. Wang Ling could sense his aura from start to finish. This was the benefit of cultivating once a month to increase the rapport between spirit swords. Sitting cross-legged on the bed, Wang Ling carefully sensed Jinka's aura. It was as if he had a radar in his head, and he knew exactly where Jinka was. Just over an hour later, grenade-throwing senior immortal saw Wang Ling open his eyes. How is it, Brother Ling? Any news? Using memory sketch, Wang Ling drew a map and marked a red dot on it. This is... Grenade-throwing senior immortal frowned. He hadn't expected Immortal Mansion's final stronghold to actually be in Winter City. Winter City's geographical location was relatively special. It was located in the extreme north of Huaxiao Nation and happened to be the exact opposite of Little Black's border laboratory. They were on opposite ends of the map. The reason why Winter City was special was that ordinary people couldn't withstand the bitter cold there, and basically no ordinary people lived there. All kinds of magic treasure traders in the cultivation circle hated this place, because magic treasures would often freeze as soon as they were taken out of their pockets. There was no room for low-quality magic treasures in Winter City at all. Grenade-throwing senior immortal had speculated a lot about the possible locations of Immortal Mansion's headquarters, but he hadn't considered Winter City. Although Winter City's environment was very harsh, it was very suitable for cultivation, and a lot of Huaxiao's military cultivation troops were stationed there. Logically speaking, no dark force would dare make a move here. But grenade-throwing senior immortal had miscalculated. It's actually Winter City. The young man in white pursed his lips. He should have thought of it earlier. Although they knew the final location of Immortal Mansion's headquarters, getting there was a new problem. Winter City didn't have an airport because there had been many accidents in which engines had been directly frozen, so the general way to get to Winter City was by bullet train. Can't we teleport? Loopy Toad, who had been lying on the ground, suddenly asked. Grenade-throwing senior immortal was astonished. When did Brother Toad learn to talk? Loopy Toad, I've always been able to talk. Then I'm really sorry. I thought Brother Ling was a boring person. Grenade-throwing senior immortal laughed. There are a lot of troops stationed in Winter City, so outsiders are closely monitored. Since Immortal Mansion's headquarters is there, it's likely that their top executives have hidden identities. We'll use our third-generation ID cards to take a bullet train. Going through the proper procedures is actually the safest way. If we let Brother Ling teleport us over, it'll be very awkward if the police come to check our IDs. Saying this, grenade-throwing senior immortal turned to look at Wang Ling. So, Brother Ling, have you decided? Wang Ling sighed and raised his head to look in the direction of Winter City. Listen to you. Without saying anything else, he looked at grenade-throwing senior immortal and spoke telepathically. Come to think of it, Wang Ling suddenly remembered that he had never taken a bullet train in his life. June 26th was Monday in the 10th week of the semester. He left a clone behind to go to school on his behalf. Just as dawn broke, Wang Ling arrived at Songhai City train station. At this time, the breakfast stalls had just been set up and the pancake stalls were just warming up. Wang Ling stepped into the VIP waiting room reserved for cultivators. At this time, the number of people was still relatively sparse. If they waited for another hour, the number of people in the ordinary waiting hall outside would skyrocket. Grenade-throwing senior immortal had booked the train tickets to Winter City, and the departure time was 6:40. Wang Ling wasn't in the habit of being late and preferred to arrive early. He looked down at the estimated time of arrival marked on the train ticket. It would take 3 hours to get to Winter City by bullet train, and after 3 hours, this dark force that had been harassing him would completely disappear from Middle-earth. Looking at the train ticket, Wang Ling sighed deeply. He just wanted to live an ordinary life. Why did they have to force him to act? While he was pondering this, Wang Ling's wristwatch phone rang. It was a call from grenade-throwing senior immortal. Brother Ling, are you already here? I just picked up Brother Luo, and I'm on my way to the station now. I'll be there in about 10 minutes. Sally and Jinren from the group is also coming with us. Grenade-throwing senior immortal said, Brother To isn't coming with us. He probably ran into some trouble. Brother Ling, see if you can help him later. Wang Ling had a puzzled expression on his face. It's like this, he has a fighting lion. It just so happens to be in heat recently. There was astonishment in Wang Ling's eyes. So this fighting lion had grenade-throwing senior immortal. Brother Ling, don't get the wrong idea. It just so happened that Brother To disturbed this fighting lion when it was in heat yesterday, so it's biting his head now and won't come down no matter what. Wang Ling, about 5 minutes after grenade-throwing senior immortal hung up, Wang Ling saw a young man with his upper body covered in blood calmly walk into the VIP waiting hall with a fighting lion on his back. Just as grenade-throwing senior immortal had said, this fighting lion had been biting Immortal Toya's head and wouldn't let go. Wang Ling. It wasn't just Wang Ling who saw this scene. Anyone who saw it would be extremely horrifying and shocking. The security personnel who followed Immortal Toya looked like they wanted to stop this kind of violation of the rules when pets were brought into the waiting hall, but they were too afraid to step forward. In the end, they could only raise a handheld loudspeaker from a distance and issue a warning. Sir, in front. Pets are not allowed in this waiting hall. Alarmed by the loudspeaker's shrill voice, the fighting lion glanced at the security personnel out of the corner of its eye. Their faces were instantly covered in fine beads of sweat, and they didn't dare speak at all. Each of them wanted to cry, but had no tears. Mom, this fighting lion was a little scary. Hi, Senior Ling. The young man sensed Wang Ling's aura. He raised his hand and greeted Wang Ling from a distance. Wang Ling. Knowing that Wang Ling was in front of him, it was as if Immortal Toya had found a life-saving straw. Senior Ling, do you have a way to help me get down? Wang Ling sighed and deliberately circled around to the back of the fighting lion as he slowly approached Immortal Toya. When he was behind the fighting lion, Wang Ling stretched out a finger and wrapped his aura around it as he poked the fighting lion's broad back. The originally agitated fighting lion was instantly so scared that its hair stood on end, and it jumped down from Immortal Toya's back. The fighting lion was so frightened by Wang Ling that it curled up and trembled on the ground. Thank you, Senior Ling. Finally able to breathe fresh air again, the young man felt as if he had been pardoned. He couldn't care less about the mess on his body. He squatted down and touched the lower half of the fighting lion's body. Finally, he sighed deeply. Now, not only is the heat over, I'm afraid there won't be a heat anymore. Chapter 278. After that, Immortal Toya made a call, and it wasn't long before Wang Ling heard the continuous roar of a helicopter in the sky outside the waiting hall. It was actually a helicopter. Furthermore, Wang Ling couldn't be more familiar with the logo on the helicopter. It was a helicopter from the 7-Star Special Forces. Back then, grenade-throwing senior Immortal had duped him into becoming an advisor. After the survival contest, General E hired me as an advisor to the 7-Star Special Forces. I never thought it would actually come in handy today. Immortal Toya raised his eyebrows as he stared at the sky, wondering if he could use this helicopter to send the fighting lion over. But I'm only borrowing this helicopter, so the fuel consumption is still on me. Based on the latest model of Spirit Core propulsion systems, using Spirit Cores as fuel costs 1 million HNY per minute. Hearing this, the corners of Wang Ling's mouth twitched fiercely. Sure enough, you could really do whatever you wanted with money. The VIP waiting hall had its own dressing room. Immortal Toya used a cleansing talisman to wash the blood off his body. Senior Ling, grenade-throwing senior Immortal, might be here soon. Tell them to wait for me. Then, he strode toward the dressing room. Wang Ling looked at the clock hanging on the wall of the waiting hall. It was already past the 10 minutes that grenade-throwing senior Immortal had mentioned earlier. As far as Wang Ling knew, grenade-throwing senior Immortal wasn't in the habit of being late. Had something happened on the way? Wang Ling's mind was filled with wild and fanciful thoughts. He really couldn't be blamed for letting his imagination run wild, because his eyelids had started to twitch again. For some reason, he had a very bad feeling about this. About 2 minutes later, a group of people dressed in ancient clothes appeared at the entrance of the VIP waiting hall. Led by the young man in white in the middle, they slowly walked over. Wang Ling felt that it would be very appropriate to use chaotic superstars as background music at a time like this. Sitting in the waiting hall, Wang Ling immediately saw Dharmaraja, Fatty Luo, and the others. On the side was a girl whose figure was almost as good as the master of shadow streams. She was wearing a light pink dress and had an iconic lotus hairpin on her head. Wang Ling knew that this was most likely Salian Jinren. He didn't think that Salian Jinren had changed much since the gate between worlds had descended 6 years ago. The only difference was that her aura was more stable. Everyone in the chat group was using their own methods to cultivate diligently, and they were improving every day. But while Wang Ling recognized Salian Jinren didn't recognize him. In theory, this wasn't the first time they had met. Salian Jinren had met 10-year-old Wang Ling 6 years ago and had given him a set of facial cleanser as soon as they met. Wang Ling still remembered it vividly. After entering the waiting hall, Salian Jinren immediately made a fuss and asked around, looking very excited. Senior Ling? Who is Senior Ling? Which one is Senior Ling? Not only had his appearance not changed, even his personality was as bold and unrestrained as it was 6 years ago. Wang Ling sighed in his heart and silently stood up from his seat. The latter immediately stopped screaming. Like most people's first impression of Wang Ling, Salian Jinren's first impression of him was that he was young and full of vitality, as well as the boundless vitality of a young man. How'd he do this? This is Brother Ling. Grenade-throwing senior Immortal stepped forward and hugged Wang Ling's shoulder as he introduced him. I never thought I'd see Senior Ling under these circumstances today. Nice to meet you. Salian Jinren shook Wang Ling's hand a little excitedly, looking like she was about to cry. Well, I was a little excited. I'm sorry. Senior Ling. The moment they shook hands, Wang Ling could clearly sense the injury in Salian Jinren's body. He had heard grenade-throwing senior Immortal mention before that it was an injury she had sustained 300 years ago. Although it could heal, it was very slow. In her heyday, Salian Jinren had reached the level of a perfected being, but after that injury, her realm had fallen several levels. It was only after nearly 100 years that her injury had stabilized and she had begun to gradually recover. Even so, Salyanjimran's current level was about the same as Dharmaraja, without the godly thunder inheritance. Just a few of us? Wang Ling raised his eyebrows and asked Grenade-throwing Senior immortal telepathically. Including Brother 2, who's still in the changing room. There are 7 of us participating in the operation this time, Grenade-throwing Senior immortal said with a smile. 7? Including himself? There were only 6 people present now. Wang Ling hadn't expected there to be a 7th brother. He started to have a bad feeling, Grenade-throwing Senior immortal. I forgot to tell Brother Ling, I only recently passed the vetting process and plan to add this brother to the chat group. I've known him for a few years, and he went to the restroom when he entered the station just now. I think he'll be back soon. Brother Ling will definitely be very surprised to see him. As soon as Grenade-throwing Senior immortal said this, then Wang Ling instantly saw someone he absolutely didn't want to see right now, from a long distance away. Wang Ling could already see a pair of long legs and blue and white striped track pants. A sunny, fair-skinned teenager was walking toward him with a smile on his face. Fang Xing, why was he here? Wang Ling tried hard to hide his stunned expression. Hello, classmate Wang Ling. As they approached, Fang Xing was the first to speak as he tilted his head slightly and smiled at Wang Ling. In Wang Ling's view, this smile was very meaningful. Let me introduce you. This is Brother Fang Xing. He's a partner I met when I went out on a mission back then. Speaking up to this point, Grenade-throwing Senior immortal suddenly laughed. Actually, Brother Fang Xing has actually met Salyanjimran once before. Salyanjimran was puzzled. 6 years ago, when the gate between worlds first descended, a demon king descended from the sky. Do you still remember this? Grenade-throwing Senior immortal asked. Salyanjimran looked like she was recalling something, and then immediately nodded. Oh, I remember that the Demon King directly landed on the head of a century-old crispy noodle snack flagship store. It even scared a 10-year-old Shota. Wang Ling, 3600 Spirit Creek Road. That's the address of that crispy noodle snack flagship store. Speaking up to this point, Grenade-throwing Senior immortal paused. And Brother Fang Xing's family's noodle shop is right next to this flagship store. When that Demon King descended back then, Brother Fang Xing could be said to be the first witness. Chapter 279. Sometimes coincidences were such unintentional things. Of course, Wang Ling preferred to call these so-called coincidences ill-fated relationships. Judging from Fang Xing's behavior toward him, Wang Ling already guessed that this guy had most likely already recognized him. If what Grenade-throwing Senior immortal said was true and Fang Xing had been the first witness, then he must have seen Wang Ling kill the Demon King with one punch and Salyanjimran embrace him. But he had still been a little Shota at that time. Furthermore, Wang Ling remembered that he had used some face-molding techniques to change his appearance moderately over the last few years. How could he recognize him? Wang Ling couldn't figure it out. Grenade-throwing Senior immortal had thought that Wang Ling and Fang Xing would be very happy to meet. But he could clearly sense that something was clearly wrong with Wang Ling after seeing Fang Xing. Grenade-throwing Senior immortal saw this Ling Jinren's rarely expressionless face change to reveal a hint of awkwardness, and the latter took the initiative to move behind him to block Fang Xing's gaze. What was going on? Grenade-throwing Senior immortal was a little baffled. Fang Xing, on the other hand, stood next to Salyanjimran with a calm smile on his face. Salyanjimran looked at Fang Xing's face with an intoxicated look in her eyes. In her hometown, she felt that this child was very handsome. So 6 years ago, Brother Fang Xing was also there. Salyanjimran had a startled expression on her face. I've actually been looking for witnesses all these years. I never thought that classmate Fang Xing would actually be the first witness. Fang Xing scratched his head a little embarrassedly. Actually, on that day, 6 years ago, our family's noodle shop was about to move. Just as we were about to finish moving, a toad fell from the sky. Everyone, wait! Dharmaraja asked. Then why did Brother Fong Xing move back now? Fong Xing smiled. My dad said that toads attract wealth. Wherever a toad falls, there will definitely be rolling in wealth. So after the government's post-disaster reconstruction work was completed, our family's noodle shop moved over. I only recently came to Shanghai City and transferred here to study, while also helping our family's noodle shop business, Fong Xing said. Everyone nodded. I see. Those who could join the chat group were, at the very least, clean when it came to their family backgrounds. Grenade throwing Senior Immortal's approval. The rest of the group naturally had nothing to say. If you have any more gossip, wait until we get in the car. From now on, Brother Fong Xing is our brother. Grenade throwing Senior Immortal put his hands on his hips and smiled with his white teeth. Also, let me tell you one more thing. Brother Fong Xing and Ling Jinren are currently studying at the same high school. Wang Ling didn't show any expression on his face when he said this, but everyone around him exclaimed in surprise. Fatty Luo, is it a trend to go to high school these days? Dharmaraja's eyes were clearly a little excited as he stared at grenade-throwing Senior Immortal and asked, Senior Immortal, is Ling Jinren and Brother Fong Xing's school still lacking students? I also want to be a transfer student. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal laughed. The school probably doesn't want students who look too mature, right? That's right. Xiaolian Jinren tidied up her appearance. If you want to find someone, you should find someone like me. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. I don't want an Annie with big breasts either. Xiaolian Jinren, Wang Ling, everyone, when grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had booked the train tickets, they were numbered in the last 3 rows of the 4th carriage. Xiaolian Jinren chose to sit alone in the first row, while Wang Ling directly chose to sit by the window in the last row, perfectly tucking himself into a corner. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had originally been sitting next to Wang Ling in the middle, but Wang Ling hadn't expected Fong Xing to ask to switch seats as soon as they got on the train. The two of them swapped seats, and then Wang Ling saw Fong Xing look at him with a bright expression on his face and smile very happily. Don't worry, classmate Wang Ling, I won't tell anyone about you. Fong Xing looked at Wang Ling and said telepathically. Wang Ling was stunned. He hadn't expected Fong Xing to actually know the mind-reading ability, which was a spell that even grenade-throwing Senior Immortal hadn't comprehended until now. Fong Xing felt that Wang Ling was an unstable factor. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had even thoroughly investigated his family background. But Wang Ling felt that he still needed to be on guard against this person, and his level was quite high. Sitting next to the two of them, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal looked a little embarrassed and felt that the atmosphere was unusually cold. As classmates, shouldn't they love each other? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal heaved a long sigh in his heart. No wonder there were cases of roommates being poisoned to death nowadays. At that moment, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's mind was filled with wild and fanciful thoughts. He couldn't imagine what would be like if Wang Ling and Fong Xing got into the same university and were assigned to the same dormitory after graduating from high school. He felt that if these two people were together in the summer, they wouldn't even need to turn on the air conditioner and wouldn't even need a fridge. The whole room would be an ice cave. So, in order to stop the atmosphere from becoming awkward, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal hurriedly took the opportunity to smooth things over. Brother Fong Xing, what did you bring? Chapter 280. The truth was that even Wang Ling couldn't say for sure how this ill-fated relationship had developed. Of course, if he knew, it wouldn't be called ill-fated relationship. But now, as he silently nibbled on the crispy noodle snacks, Wang Ling knew very well that this ill-fated relationship had already begun to deepen. After eating the crispy noodle snack, the young man in white sucked his fingers and praised it profusely. Brother Fong Xing, this crispy noodle snack tastes pretty good. In the front seats, Dharmaraja, Immortal Toya, Fatty Luo, and Xiaolian Jinren all nodded in agreement. Indeed, after eating the noodles, I feel like my body is filled with spirit energy. Brother Fong Xing, did you add a lot of spirit herbs to your noodles? Immortal Toya savored it carefully. There are over 100 types of spirit herbs in this small bag. It wasn't easy to cover up the flavor of these spirit herbs while ensuring that the crispy noodle snacks taste good. Senior, you flatter me. Fong Xing smiled. I just applied what I learned at school to my family's noodle shop. These new varieties of instant noodles, including the crispy noodle snacks, are new products developed by our noodle shop, and we haven't officially sold them yet. Haha, then aren't we the first people to eat crabs? Dharmaraja laughed like a $200 child. As he laughed, he directly turned his head to look at Wang Ling. By the way, what do you think, Ling Jinren? Everyone knew that Ling Jinren didn't have any hobbies other than crispy noodle snacks. There was probably no one here who had a greater right to speak than Ling Jinren. Wang Ling had thought this would be a very simple question. However, he sank into a long silence for some reason. Whenever Wang Ling thought it was a simple question, he felt that things inexplicably became thorny. When it came to Fong Xing, Wang Ling didn't dislike Fong Xing, but felt that this person was very troublesome. Initially, Wang Ling didn't want to answer Dharmaraja's question in order to maintain his cold and aloof image. But there was a good saying, and that was, "You can't help it." Since he had already eaten, Wang Ling felt that nodding a little wouldn't hurt him. And so, after 2 long minutes of silence, Wang Ling stared at the glittering bag in his hand and nodded. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal couldn't help skiing at this scene. Brother Ling rarely praises people. Brother Fong Xing's product will definitely sell well. It's great that classmate Wang Ling likes it. Fong Xing gave his trademark sunny smile and looked at Wang Ling with a burning gaze. He noticed that Wang Ling had already turned his head to the window and was looking at the scenery outside. After that, there was a brief silence in the car. This time, they were going to Winter City to directly raze Immortal Mansion to the ground. This was actually a secret, and when they had set off, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal and the others had instructed them not to mention it on the road, in case the walls had ears. Since Immortal Mansion was able to gain a foothold in Winter City, where the military was stationed, the number of spies in the shadows must be staggering. Apart from receiving customers, Fatty Luo was someone who didn't like to gossip too much. As for Immortal Toya, he was even more ascetic. As an alchemist, there were times when he would sit in front of his pill furnace for days and nights at a time. The train to Winter City only took 3 hours, but for this handsome man with an ancient style, it was like the blink of an eye. Seeing that they had dropped the subject, Salian Jinren simply started knitting a scarf in the car. Wang Ling had heard Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal say before that Salian Jinren had knitted this scarf for her new boyfriend. Thus, Dharmaraja had been stifled on the way. Unable to hold it in any longer, Dharmaraja decided to stir things up and ask some gossip. By the way, how on earth did Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal and Brother Fong Xing know each other? Senior Immortal only said that you ran into Brother Fong Xing when you were out on a mission. Actually, although Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had been introducing Fong Xing's current identity, most people in the chat group didn't know about his past. It could be said that Dharmaraja's question was also what Salian Jinren and Fatty Luo wanted to know. Furthermore, they were even more curious about Fong Xing's strength. Based on his current aura, Fong Xing wasn't weak. He was at the average level of the people here, or even above them. Actually, this question, because it involves Brother Fong Xing's privacy, I wasn't going to say it at first. But Brother Fong Xing specifically told me that if you ask me a question in person, I'll answer it. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal crossed one leg over the other and looked like he was about to gossip. But then he realized that his legs weren't as long as Fong Xing's when he crossed them, so he quietly put them down again. Brother Fong Xing and I became close. To be exact, it was 3 years ago when he was still studying in Jinghua City. Classmate Fong was an adopted son of the Fong family and was adopted by the Fong couple when he was very young. Later, because his grades were very good, Tianshi Imperial High School made an exception and recruited him. Do you remember that girl whose entire family was silenced 3 years ago? I once accepted a little girl's 1 yuan coin and directly went to avenge her by slaughtering those evil forces. When that happened, It actually wasn't far from Tianshi Imperial High School. Grenade-throwing senior Immortal recalled carefully. And it was during that incident that I happened to meet Brother Fong Xing. By the time I wiped out those evil forces, it was already dark. Someone had called the police, and before they arrived on the scene, Brother Fong Xing helped me clean up the aftermath and get rid of the bodies of those evil people. Back then, everyone had heard of the incident. This great death-courting senior had accepted a little girl's 1 yuan coin as a reward and wiped out the entire underground gang of evil forces in Jinghua City. At that time, it had caused an uproar in the cultivation circle. But no one had expected that Fong Xing would actually be left out of that incident back then. Dharmaraja was very satisfied with this gossip. So that's how it is. But now that Senior Immortal mentioned it, I seem to remember reading a related report in a small newspaper somewhere back then. It was said that Senior Immortal wasn't the only person who wiped out those evil forces in Jinghua City back then. There was also a girl. It's probably just a coincidence. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal chuckled. I did a very good job keeping that incident a secret back then. If I hadn't exposed Brother Fong Xing, I don't think anyone would have known about it. As for the small package of paper from that place, it's probably just for attention. Maybe. Dharmaraja nodded skeptically, then turned to look at Wang Ling Jinren. What do you think? As soon as he said this, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal hurriedly covered Dharmaraja's mouth and made a shoot gesture as he said in a very low voice, "You mustn't disturb Ling Jinren when he's studying. It's taboo." Everyone looked over and was stunned to find that while they had been discussing Fong Xing's background just now, Ling Jinren was actually holding a book called One Talisman, One Seal Script, and happily doing exercises for the Tao Talismans class. Chapter 281. No matter how strong Wang Ling was, he was still essentially a student, and since he was a student, he had to learn. Actually, Wang Ling felt a little guilty about leaving a clone to substitute for him in class. It was just like how a lot of people only did their homework on the last day of the summer or winter break. Although Wang Ling only needed a hand over his homework to that guy Pan, and he could finish it in a few minutes, powered by spirit energy, the bullet train traveled all the way to Winter City, and it only took a short 3 hours to cross thousands of li. As they approached Winter City, it was very obvious that the air around them quickly became colder, just as the rumors said. Wang Ling looked through the carriage and saw that a lot of cultivators had consciously put on more clothes for themselves. Unless one was at the Golden Core stage, it was a little hard to resist the cold in Winter City. In contrast, the 7 people in the chat group didn't get up or put on more clothes. It was a harmonious scene. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was still wearing the long johns that Wang Ling had given him back then, so he wasn't afraid of the cold at all. Looking at the snow-covered scenery and the clear sky outside the bullet train, Wang Ling felt that his agitated mood had calmed down a lot. Burying his head in homework earlier had actually been a way for him to calm down. Tisk, it's almost minus 60 degrees outside, right? Some magic treasures aren't very resistant to the cold. In an environment like Winter City, I'm afraid they'll only be able to exert less than half their power. Fatty Luo looked out the window. Next to him, Dharmaraja looked at Fatty Luo's undershirt and baggy underpants and the palm leaf fan in his hand and shivered. "Brother Luo, can you put on some clothes? I wasn't cold at first, but now I'm cold because of you." This was Fatty Luo's trademark getup: undershirt, underpants, and a palm leaf fan, just like the goggles that Dharmaraja always carried with him. None of your business. Fatty Luo automatically ignored Dharmaraja's opinion. My undershirt and underpants are very good at keeping warm. If Fatty Luo hadn't said it, no one would have believed that these undershirt and underpants were actually magic treasures, and rather high-grade Taoist robes at that. About 10 minutes later, the melodious voice of a female train attendant rang out in the train. "Dear passengers, thank you for taking the Harmony Spiritual-Powered train. We are about to arrive at our final station, Winter City. Thank you for your support. We look forward to seeing you again. Have a pleasant journey." The 7 of them got off the bus and exited the station. At the exit, everyone was stopped and had their IDs checked. Everything played out as grenade-throwing senior immortal had predicted. Although Winter City was where Huashio's cultivation army was stationed, there weren't any restrictions on ordinary people coming here. Although it was a little cold, the snowy scenery was still pretty good. Wang Ling heard that Little Black's Armstrong Cyclone Jet Armstrong cannon had been inspired by an ice sculpture in Winter City back then. The owners of the ice sculptures were a silver-haired uncle who loved to pick his nose and a girl with a bun hairstyle. Because he collected all kinds of magic treasure maps all year round, Fatty Luo had the honor of being the map navigator this time. Combined with the map of Winter City, which Wang Ling had memorized earlier, Fatty Luo could basically confirm the location of Immortal Mansion. It's at Sanyuan Road, I'm sure. In the rustling cold wind and fluttering snow, Fatty Luo sat on a bench in the square in front of the train station in just a pair of underpants as he confirmed the final location for everyone with a little excitement on his face. Lord Jinka, I'm here to find you. From his words, it was clear that this fangirl Fatty Luo was confident in Jinka. He had used the word find instead of save. In Fatty Luo's view, Jinka was already strong enough on his own. It wouldn't be strange if he directly destroyed Immortal Mansion. Wang Ling frowned slightly. There was no other reason than that he had a bad feeling. He recalled the prophetic dream that Loopy Toad had told him about before. In it, there was a fatty who had been tied to an iron pillar and then had his heart pierced by a Taoist in red. Wang Ling had a vague feeling that if that fatty was among the 7 of them on this trip, it would be either Fatty Luo or Dharmaraja. Brother Ling, is there a problem? Grenade-throwing senior immortal asked when he saw that Wang Ling's expression didn't look too good. Wang Ling hurriedly shook his head. Before Loopy Toad's prophetic dream was confirmed, Wang Ling felt that there was no need to cause panic at all. Then it's decided. Let's go to Sanyuan Road first and take a look, said grenade-throwing senior immortal. But how are we going to get there? Asked Silent Jinren. Most of the 7 of them weren't familiar with Winter City. Only grenade-throwing senior immortal had come here a few times when he was out on a mission, but he still wasn't very familiar with Sanyuan Road. Should we rent an unlicensed car? I saw a lot of unlicensed car drivers scurrying about in the square just now. Fatty Luo smiled a little shiftily. Because he had been refining and collecting magic treasures all year round, Fatty Luo actually had a criminal record as a grave robber. Every time he went somewhere, he would rent an unlicensed car to take him straight to his destination. So he had always had a special feeling for the unlicensed car drivers. Brother Luo, hurry up and put away that bold idea of yours. It'll be very troublesome if we're caught renting an unlicensed car. Grenade-throwing senior immortal sighed. It's better to use DD Taxi for the 7 of us. But just as grenade-throwing senior immortal was about to open the app, a black commercial car approached them from a distance. A sky blue number plate? Everyone couldn't help frowning, because this number plate was specially used by the Winter City government. Wang Ling was puzzled when he suddenly received a call at that moment. He looked at the caller ID. It was actually Ajwa, staring at the commercial car with a government number plate as it approached and slowed down. Wang Ling's wristwatch vibrated for a few seconds before he finally picked up the call. Hello, Shifu. Just as he picked up the call, Ajwa's excited voice was already on the other end of the line. Are you in Winter City now? Why didn't you tell your disciple before you went to Winter City? The corners of Wang Ling's mouth twitched. Just as he was about to ask how Ajwa had found out, Ajwa had already answered first. Today, Warden Liang and I were checking on the work of the Master of Shadow Stream's younger sister, who was arrested last time. His network surveillance system immediately saw your entry record. Just swipe your 3rd-generation ID card and we'll know right away. Sure, Fu, don't worry. Even if I had 100 guts, I wouldn't be able to track you. Wang Ling, odd. The black commercial car in front of you was arranged by Warden Liang and a colleague from Winter City's municipal government. It's very inconvenient to move around in Winter City, so you can have them pick you up. No need to be polite. Wang Ling. Sure enough, disciples were all Shifu's sweet little cotton-padded jackets. After saying that, Ajwa hung up the phone excitedly. In the office of Songhai First Prison, Warden Liang looked at Odd Zhua a little strangely. Director Zhua, why are you so happy? Is your Shifu going to pass on his secret art to you? Oh, not really. Odd Zhua shook his head first, then sighed. It's just that I've been too busy recently and haven't seen Shifu in a long time. Now that we've talked on the phone, I feel a lot better. Director Zhua, I personally feel that there's something wrong with the relationship between you and your disciple. Warden Liang analyzed the situation. A master and disciple who haven't seen each other for a long time are like a long-distance couple. If they don't keep in touch normally, I'm afraid this relationship won't last long. It would have been better if Warden Liang hadn't said anything. But as soon as he said this, even Odd Zhua panicked a little. He grabbed Warden Liang's hand excitedly. Brother, thank you for the reminder. Warden Liang, what are you doing? Odd Zhua buying tickets to Winter City to find my Shifu. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.